not letting me sign in.
Good morning, everyone. We will call the January 18th, 2022 council work session to order. Mr. Jennings is a little under the weather, so Mr. Maxwell will be sitting in for him. And we are starting out with a great presentation. We have some new recruits for our police department, and so we will bring them forward for their oath of office. Deputy Chief Gandy.
Mayor, Council.
Good morning, all.
Morning, everybody. So this morning we are going to have the swearing in for our newest police officers with the Clearwater Police Department. From council's left to right, we have Matthew Capone. He attended Long Island University and Stony Brook University and serves as a police officer with NYPD. Jonathan Klein served in the Marines prior to serving as a police officer with the Camp Pendleton Police Department. Benjamin McCullum attended Pasco Hernando State College. He serves as a corrections deputy and then a patrol deputy with the Pasco County Sheriff's Office. Adam Mengerink served in the Marines prior to serving as a police officer with the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. Samantha Negron served in the United States Air Force prior to serving as a police officer with the Buffalo Police Department. Of New Haven before serving as a police officer for the Southington Police Department in Connecticut. Damian Rios served in the Marines and graduated from the Law Enforcement Academy. Lauren Stiles earned an associate's degree from St. Petersburg College and served as a police officer with the Treasure Island Police Department. And finally, Cole Van Dusen earned a bachelor's degree from Florida Southern State College and was employed as a security guard for Allied Security.
Now, Madam Clerk will administer the oath.
You can raise your right hand. I state your name.
I,
Do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida and the charter and laws of the city of Clearwater, that I am duly qualified to hold office under the charter and laws of the city of Clearwater, and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of a police officer on which now I'm about to enter.
Watch this rise right here. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome aboard.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Be safe.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Welcome. Welcome.
Congratulations. Be careful.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Well, we wish all the new recruits the best of luck, and we pray that they are safe. We also want to thank all of their family members. We know that that is a sacrifice as well, that they are on duty on a daily basis and something that you all worry about them. We have a marvelous department with great leadership, and I think they have found a great home. So thank you all. Item 3.1.
Approve an agreement between the City of Clearwater and Kaleidoscope Group LLC to complete a citywide cultural assessment.
Mr. Strong.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council members, Assistant City Manager Micah. Today, my name is Mr. Sherman Stroman. I am the Diversity Manager for the city. With me today is Mrs. Frida Daniels. She's our Diversity Equity Senior Analyst. And also with me today is Mrs. Chris Georges, who is CEO of Kaleidoscope. The purpose of us today is to, we want to discuss having a citywide cultural assessment done for the city, and we want to seek your approval to have that done. The purpose of a cultural assessment would be to engage our community in our current culture and identify areas of growth where we can become more inclusive in all of our practice, as well as intentionally capitalize on areas where we are doing well and build upon them. This process will evaluate our practice from recruiting, hiring, and retention, as well as our policies and procedures to ensure we are using an equitable lens and creating and sustaining an inclusive work culture of belonging.
So the reason for this culture assessment is really to evolve our organization to be a place of inclusion. And this will be reflective not only in having a diverse workforce, but also increasing employee engagement. And we know when we increase employee engagement, productivity also increases. And so some of the desirable outcomes that we would like to see from the the strategic plan is basically is for Kaleidoscope to create a strategic plan overall for the city, as well as making individual departmental strategic plans, consulting around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so once these are developed, then we'll have a strategic plan to move forward in one direction where we're all doing the things that we should normally be doing when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Basically, so we could strengthen a culture of belonging throughout the workplace and have a cohesive goal to grow towards. And again, this includes increasing succession planning for our employees, as well as training, recruiting, and retention opportunities, and ensuring that our practices that we have are equitable.
Good morning, thank you. I just want to thank Sherman, you gave me a promotion. I'm actually the COO of Kaleidoscope Group. I've had the great pleasure to be with the organization since we started in '93. We are considered to be a pioneer in it, so we've been doing this work with many organizations, really from the vantage place of creating change and helping organizations really thrive and achieve their mission in ways they never had before. So we live the work. We're a certified minority-owned business. We are minority majority, and we do this work nationally all over the country in a very tailored and nuanced way. We also do the work globally. And then where we need to do the work, in a real full-service way, we utilize strategic alliance partners who have real great functional understanding of the industries and the areas that we're doing the work.
Are you going to bring the video that you're...
Our approach with the city is pretty, kind of 6 steps. Really looking at one, what's your foundation? What are your policies? What do you already have in place? And how do we build from there? And then with that, then how do we make sure we connect it to the mission and the vision that all of you have set forth and that is important for the city to really achieve what it intends to on a daily basis for everybody. With that, once we know where we're headed and what that North Star is, then we're going to say, okay, what's your current starting place? And we'll look at your culture, the things that you need to know, and help you figure that out through some surveys and focus groups and things of that nature, as well as do a deeper dive analysis of your policies. From there, after that analysis, we'll come up with some recommendations, and then we'll really start to co-present and strategize with your department agency leaders and come up with the right plans that really will take you into that strategic planning and develop those roadmaps to go forward, where everybody's aligned on where you're going, why you're going there, and what you want to achieve. And then finally, we'll present that back to everybody so everybody's on the same page, as well as kind of externally, so it's very clear, transparent, and it's taking you to the next level.
So some of the deliverables from Kaleidoscope Group is to deliver a cohesive recruiting strategy plan and also allow us to have web content for diversity, equity, inclusion webpage. This is also attractive for applicants because it's something that they look for when they look for some company or organization to be a part of. And so we want the City of Clearwater to be that organization where applicants want to come and work for us because we do embrace diversity, equity, inclusion, and have a sense of belonging. And so we also want to make sure that we're communicating the different strategies when it comes to DEI effectively, as well as making sure that we're developing the strategic plan as a whole and moving together in one direction.
And so as we think about this, as I shared, we've been doing this a long time, and when we got into this work way back in the 90s, it was really about helping organizations correct a problem and kind of stay out of trouble. The good news is everybody sees this now as a mission driver, and real true business outcomes can come from that. And so we went from kind of correcting a problem to realizing there's value. And so we also realized that valuing and leveraging differences is really important to help organizations be its most optimal and effective. And then from there, the industry kind of took a little turn and says, but what might be getting in the way of valuing and leveraging differences? And that's where bias really comes in. So when we start looking at what you have inside your organization, we'll give a lens to that around where might there be some hidden biases, help you identify those and then address those, and ideally get to a place where you're going from staying out of trouble to really getting intentional and purposeful around inclusion and around empowerment and really kind of bringing everybody together to achieve great results. So that's our kind of what we call our evolution of this work and where we are now. There are some organizations that really kind of take an approach of really just looking at problems and seeing this from a problem vantage point. We see this from vision and opportunity. And so that's where we're going to want to guide you, taking into account your foundation and then building from there. And again, we're going to partner in this process. We're going to guide you, but you all are going to own it. And we're going to meet everybody where they are to take them where everybody needs to go. And so when we really dig into understanding your baseline, we look at it in a couple of ways. One, we look at it from the vantage point of quantitative. What do you know about your organization? What is your data and telling you? And how do we make sure that we take that data and we give you an overall snapshot, but we also give you a very detailed snapshot because not every part of the organization is going to be in the same place. Really want to kind of fine-tune that, understand that, and then help each of your leaders get their arms around where they are so that they can really create a plan to go forward. So that'll be the data side, and that's what this slide is kind of telling you. That's that quantitative. And then there's going to be the qualitative, and that really gets at the why things might be the way that they are. And so we look at both. We bring those together through analysis of it, hearing from people, deep diving into the data, and then coming up with what we call your baseline, and then recommendations to be able to go forward. And so what those recommendations will look like, we'll give you guidance around that, but we'll co-partner with all of your leaders to come up with what's going to be right for them based on where they are.
So the estimated timeline for this, we're looking at about 11 months in which we should have a comprehensive plan to move forward and helping improve us in some of our weaker areas and helping us once again continue to improve on some of the areas that are our strengths right now. So the cost table breakdown, the service rendered by Kaleidoscope will total about $241,980, and this would be done over 2 budget cycles. So the bottom line impact of this, the genesis of this started with late Mr. Horn. This was something that, he championed, and he had the foresight to really kind of start planning and thinking about this. And so I know my predecessor was kind of asked to kind of start preparing for this. And so with that said, we're honored to be able to continue some of the work that he started and looking at moving this forward. And with this being done, we'll be able to see the transformation of the workforce and better the workplace, and therefore positively influencing the governance which we have here, which we hope that can spill out into our community and our partners we have here with the city. And the assessments are directly related to performance and equity and a component of performance. It would also set the tone for an organizational culture that embraces inclusion and belonging. DEI is the goal of government, which at the end of the day is to serve our citizens in an equitable way and to do so effectively. It begins with intentionally with our processes to become more efficient, effective, and equitable, which at the end of the day will create a more welcoming government for us all. Thank you.
Thank
Mayor.
you all.
Thank you, City Council members. Thank you,
Questions from the
Any
council?
questions?
Councilmember Albritton.
Yeah, so I see the timeline is about 11 months here, and based on your knowledge, because you work for the city, what do you think, how long will it take to implement after we get the comprehensive report, I guess in November of 22?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, where do you think we stand now, and how, when this affects it, what do you think it's going to, how many years do you think it's going to take for us to get?
Well, I think you'll have some quick fixes. I think so. Some of those things, which they identify, we'll be able to, and it could be some policy changes or including some things in some of the policies for each department, possibly. Some of those things could be, an immediate fix. Now, there are going to be some other things that may take some time. When you're looking at affecting and changing culture, especially, if we go into a situation and it's been identified that there are some departments that are having some major cultural issues within them, that could take, a little bit of time to kind of weed out what's going on and how we can effectively help, induce change with those cultures. So if I had to guesstimate a time frame, I would say after this is done, I would say about possibly a year and a half to be able to totally affect all the changes. But there'll be some things that'll be identified that can be changed immediately.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Beckman.
Thank you. Thank you to the HR department for getting this going. It's really important, especially in light of recent, developments. I would say, in the research I've done and articles I've heard, it seems like it's the culture and the environment that you work in and the feeling of appreciation and that your work has value that really keeps people in a job, even more so a lot of times than pay. And it's just, that will end up saving us money if we're going to look at it economically, but we just have more happier employees, a better culture. So I really appreciate this type of work, and I think it's needed, and it's only going to lead to good outcomes. I did have a couple of notes on the PowerPoint. One, I made a note when you were giving the presentation and talking about the baseline. Do we have right now a cultural vision mission statement that we're working off of? Does the city have a stated workforce culture statement or anything?
Not to my knowledge. That would be something, once again, we have identified as something that we would also look to
Develop,
create.
yeah. Okay, I didn't know if we already had one that we haven't been adhering to, or, okay. And then I have a question on, okay, so it's on the slide that's got the lavender steps, the high-level project overview. You have as you know, this is the timeline, leadership alignment session. So my question is leadership department chairs and city manager, city attorney? Does it include council members? What's the definition of leadership alignment? You know, who's involved in that?
Well, we would think that, you know, we would like to include all leadership. That would definitely be our goal. I think, you know, initially, I think this was probably looking at, you know, some of the department leaderships, but I think, as you mentioned it, I think, you know, we can be more inclusive and include where it's necessary. But right now, I think from this overview project, it was looking at probably the departmental heads and up.
Okay. And then also on that slide, we've got design content recommendations for a DEI webpage. And so my question is this an internal webpage or is it public facing?
That would be public facing. That would be part of our recruiting strategy as well. So that way, people could know what the makeup of the city of Clearwater is, what we value, and that way they could be attracted to our site and those ways, because a lot of applicants look for that content. And so that is another asset that Kaleidoscope would be able to develop for us.
Great. And I guess that another notation I have is, will we be informing the public of how we are doing on some of these steps, or do we only give a report at the end?
Well, they will be providing to me. Kaleidoscope will be providing to me kind of updates, you know, monthly if they're, you know, quarterly as we agree upon. I'm more than happy, you know, to kind of provide the updates on Kaleidoscope, where we're at with that. That's absolutely, you know, a problem. But originally, it was going to come to me as far as the updates and where we are.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one of my questions and concerns. I don't want to wait till November
Okay. Yeah, no.
to see the work product. I'd like at least a couple interim reports
Okay.
on how things are going.
Yes.
First of all, just because I want to understand what your findings are and then what some of your solutions are, so that we don't just get it in one package at the end. Because I think it does go obviously to management, but it also should go to the council for policy. So,
Absolutely.
Councilmember Beckman, sorry for
No, it's all
chiming in there,
All
but
good.
that's one of my big questions as well.
I think that was it, yeah. Yeah, let me double check one more spot that I put notes. Nope, all good, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Well, I think given the climate of today's workforce and whatnot, I think this is an exercise that is definitely necessary and it's time for. But as a business owner, I can tell you, I can disagree to a point with Councilmember Beckman on the culture and environment is more important than the money, because given today's economy and what's happening, people are out looking, they're not hesitating to change jobs for more money. And so that's another, I don't know how that plays into what you do, but we get our money from the citizens of Clearwater, and they're not happy when we tell them they've got to give us more money. So it's a very delicate balance, and it's a well-known fact. We have very talented people in many of our departments, but if they can take those same talents into the private sector, the money is better. So we've got to be able to provide the best environment we can to hold on to them to the best we can, but the almighty dollar is a very important factor.
And this is not to say, in response to that money doesn't matter. It is really to say that at some point, it no longer becomes the end-all be-all. So if I'm at a position where I'm making all this money, but I'm completely miserable, the chances are of me staying at that job, even though I'm making this money, is not worth my mental health. And so then I'll end up leaving or even taking a pay cut if I have a better mental state. And so those are the choices that employees are recognizing, and the power that applicants are recognizing that they have, and they're not settling. And so with this, if we are able to produce a culture, people stay for culture, even if it may not pay as well, but I enjoy coming to work and I enjoy what I do, then money, it makes a difference. But will I leave because of that? I don't know what I'm stepping into, and I may not have the culture that I'm expecting, where I know I'm being treated appropriately. I know that I could come to work as my full self and be accepted. And so that's the culture that we're trying to produce, so we can be more competitive.
That's the point I'm making, because we, as a city and in government, don't have the ability to compete with the pay scale of the public sector. So we need to be creating the best environment we can possibly do.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
And if I could,
Because exactly for that reason.
yeah, absolutely, and you're all on point. This can be a competitive advantage when it comes to talent, and especially the young talent of today. They're looking for organizations that believe in this, that live this, and make this a part of who they are and how they operate on a daily basis. So even the need and desires by workforce generation are really different, and so helping you all tap into that as you go forward is important. And I would say at the end of this, our goal is to make sure that you can carry the torch on this. This is sustainable, and this becomes a part of who you are, your mission, how you operate and live on a daily basis. The last thing I think is also an important call out here is oftentimes people quit culture, but they also quit leaders. They quit bad managers. And so a big part, I'll just tell you now, of this work and the work that we do everywhere we go is really helping leaders understand what it takes to create an inclusive team, an inclusive culture, high performing, and really helping to create those relationships.
Vice Mayor.
You could not have segued better into what I was just getting ready to say. In the oath of office we just administered to these new police officers for Clearwater, if you noticed, a lot of these officers came from other police forces up north and whatnot. They came down here because Clearwater has we already have a pretty good culture, but doesn't say we can't improve it. But what they were experiencing and dealing with where they were versus what they can get here is why they're here. And I think that's a great point. Thank you.
Councilmember Bunker.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the work that you're doing for us and about to embark on. Again, with the recent revelations, it's very important that we do this. I think it's also important to acknowledge that, yeah, money is nice, but the culture is important. You want to be happy and content and feel like you are part of this and are contributing. No matter how much money you get paid, there's only so much abuse you can take. I'm curious to see if, because I was kind of startled by the revelations that I just heard about recently. What process do we have now for some of these complaints to reach higher levels? And are there any whistleblower protections in place for folks who want to bring up troubling issues in departments?
They are.
Good morning, Jennifer Foyer, Human Resources Director. So we do have policies in place that not only encourage but require people to come forth whenever they are a witness and or the victim of any kind of racial or sexual type of discrimination. So we have those things in place. Now, however, when there's a culture issue, which was has been identified in that area where it had been pervasive for a time frame, those policies obviously failed us, right? And so that's what we want to make sure, that we are creating an environment where those policies don't continue to fail us, and that employees feel safe and understand that that's not okay, regardless of what it is that might be taking place within those environments, that they know that that's not something that is condoned or appreciated by the city as a whole.
Are we actively rooting out some of these other problems right now?
I mean, we certainly, any type of complaint that comes to HR is fully investigated, regardless of where or how it comes. So we do our best with the information that we have, and what we need to improve upon is how we get that information, is that making sure those employees feel like it is okay to come forward and that they are required to, and that they will be protected from doing so.
Okay, thank you.
And to Jennifer's point, a big part of our work.
You could come forward closer to the mic.
Thank you. And to Jennifer's point, a big part of our work really is how, it all comes down to trust. Do people feel that they can share and trust the process and the people that they're sharing it with? So a big part of the assessment will include getting at what will help people have that trust if they don't have it. Some might have it, others maybe not so much. And so that will also help us get to the root of that, so then you can start to bridge, where the gaps are.
Well, thank you all very much. This
Thank
is a
you.
great legacy of
Thank you.
Mr. Horan's, and we look forward to seeing the results. Consent?
Yes.
3.2.
Approve the collective bargaining agreement as negotiated between the City of Clearwater and Iaff Local 1158 for fiscal years 2021 and 2022 through 2023-2024.
Good morning again. Jennifer Poyer, Human Resources Director. So, we are extremely excited to bring forward to you this morning a recommendation to approve the collective bargaining agreement that has been negotiated between the city and the Iaff Local 1158 for those fiscal years. This is a 3-year contract that expired on September 30th. And has been significantly ratified by the membership to the tune of, I think it was 117 to 11 was the vote. So they had great voter turnout and a very high approval rating for this contract. So the agreement does include, for retroactivity back to October 1st, all of the conditions, including the pay schedule, which is a new pay schedule, very different from what we currently have, are listed within the document. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have in reference to that. The estimated cost of the agreement is $2.074 million, and will be implemented through those fiscal years and budgeted as such. If you have any, it will require a first quarter budget amendment transfer of $500,000 from the non-departmental cost code to the fire department to provide for the remaining funding for this contract year.
Any questions for Ms. Boyer? Councilmember Beckman.
So I know that you've worked hard, and it's
Group effort for sure.
yeah, and it's been pretty tedious, right, and drawn out. And we've had meetings in the shade where we've talked about different things that the firefighters have asked for, and that we've discussed and advised, and you've had all that power, which is appropriate and fine. And I'm fully in support. I trust you, and I trust the process. But when I look at this document, I just have some questions to be transparent and understand what's going on. I'm a lifelong public servant, has been in a union, support unions, appreciate the power of unions. But I do, as a public servant with, the checkbook here, and I just have some questions that I just want some insight. So I had to look up what Kelly days are.
Sure.
And so it looks like they're awarded a Kelly Day. And so I looked up a Kelly Day schedule is a day on, a day off, a day on, a day off, a day on, and 4 days off. Is that how we work it generally?
Well, so that's not what the Kelly Day schedule is. So that is their work schedule.
Okay.
So what a Kelly Day provides is a day off during that work schedule to provide for additional time off. And it is an overtime reliever. That's the purpose, to have those Kelly Days. But that day on, day off schedule, that's a firefighter schedule. That doesn't have anything to do with the Kelly Days.
Okay. And so when I did just a little reading, a normal Kelly schedule is usually 56 hours, and they're asking for a 53 40-hour average week, so they're getting a little less, I mean, right? For a so some firefighters work 56 hours at Kelly's schedule, ours are gonna work 53.
Right, so that's something that was previously negotiated, that's not a change in this
Okay,
contract, that's
okay.
something that has been in there, but yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then I have a question on, there are a lot of pages, but.
There are.
Okay, sports. So again, this isn't a change, but this is something that
Sure.
I'm just want to understand. So participation in sporting activities while on duty shall be permitted in accordance with fire department, I guess it's standard operating procedure, or whatever, SOP. So what does that look like and what does that mean? I'm envisioning that they can play volleyball or play something on the premises of the fire station if they're not on a call.
Sure, so, and the chief is here, so he can answer questions in terms of how their structure is set up, but I will tell you that the purpose in terms of allowing that stuff is that there is a physical, fitness standard required for our firefighters, and so with the schedule that's built in, they do allow opportunities, and I believe it's built into the operations to have some time set aside for physical fitness activities. I'll let the chief provide some additional information.
Good morning, Council. Scott Ellis, Fire Chief. Yeah, that sports activity aspect of it is to make sure that, the number one killer in firefighters is heart problems across the nation. And one of the things that they've done over the last 10, 15 years is to increase the aerobic activity of that. So as part of that, most of that is just regular weightlifting and bicycling, that type of stuff. There are times, though, that the individuals may grab a volleyball and throw it out there on the premises near the truck. So if they have any type of call, they're expedient to that truck and get to the call. That is the main reason behind that.
Well, we've had basketball hoops at different
That's
stations,
correct.
and we have workout equipment at stations
That's
too.
correct. Every station has workout equipment. Every station has some type of ability for the firefighters to increase that aerobic activity.
Okay, so that's what that means. And then workers'
And that's in addition, so they also have station duties, it's not just, it's not only responding to calls that they are required to do, so, in addition to the station duties, they do have time for physical fitness.
Okay, so then if they're out there playing volleyball and they get injured, that falls under workers' comp?
It absolutely does.
Okay, just thought about that.
Yes.
And, okay. And then I see that, they're not required to do lawn maintenance and things like that. I mean, do we pay city employees to go in and clean the fire stations and all that, or do they kind of keep?
No, ma'am, that's part of their normal duties
Okay.
in the morning. They gotta take care of their apparatus, they gotta take care of the station, and they have training. So, but
Okay.
we do not have outside employees coming to the fire station to clean it.
Okay, and then this is a change. It says, "The city shall provide free access for all bargaining unit members and family members who are currently enrolled on the city's health insurance plan."
Yes.
So is that specific just to firefighter
No,
employees?
it's,
Okay.
it's something that's been approved through all the collective bargaining agreements and for, non-bargaining members as well.
Okay, just wanted to make sure everybody
Yes.
got that. And then, so then during each fiscal year, employees will have the opportunity to earn wellness incentive leave hours for maintaining physical fitness and wellness standards as set forth in department policy. And that program is voluntary. So they get bonus days off if they stay physically fit, which is a requirement of their job.
Yeah, but this program, this is a brand-new program, and I will tell you that this was a brainchild of one of our firefighters who did a tremendous amount of work to try and incentivize above and beyond wellness. So they have statistics that they have used, and it is based on gender and I think age as well, is how he has it broken out. That they have to exceed normal wellness standards. So for example, push-ups, you have to be able to do so many push-ups, and it's graded by the different qualifiers in order for you to be eligible for the wellness. And so it wouldn't be just what is considered normal ability to qualify for the fitness or the wellness incentive. You would have to exceed those. So this is a brand new program. He did a lot of demos and voluntary participation with it to see to make sure that his parameters that he had set forth were realistic for both men and women. So this is not just meeting, this is exceeding in order to qualify for the fitness standard.
Could we do that for all employees? I mean, if I got to work to do, 200 sit-ups in a minute or something, whatever it is, to get 2 days off.
It's
I don't know if we'd have a council.
Oh, well, I don't think I could, but I mean,
Yeah, so it's something certainly to take into consideration, especially for those positions that do have physical requirements. And you would be better served by being in shape to perform those very physical, and we have several of those. It wouldn't be something we could force on them, especially for those
No,
collective
but
bargaining agreements. But in
voluntary.
terms of something like that, if they would be interested, absolutely.
and if our health, our health benefit cost, if we can incentivize with a couple of days off for
Absolutely.
exceeding something. And then I guess speaking of exceeding, I had a question about, and I've got it annotated, but it goes to the evaluations. And I guess let me get to where it is, but they get, okay, merit increases. All right, so it says, beginning on the first day of payroll period, employees who receive a rating of meet standards or better on their annual performance review shall be provided merit pay of $1,800. Merit pay will be paid in blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Okay, so you're getting merit pay for meets expectations.
Correct.
I have a problem with that. I mean, you're supposed to meet your expectations and do your job. Why would you get an $1,800 bonus for meeting expectations?
Sure. So I will tell you that the city is not currently set up with a true merit system that would allow for something to be different than that. We actually, I don't know if you all have seen some of the emails, but we are in the process of overhauling our performance evaluation system to where that it could be something that is more specific and would be better prepared to utilize something such as what you're suggesting, but how we currently are set up, our performance evaluation system would not be sufficient to really provide meaningful ratings to do something different. And I will tell you that the current system and what you're speaking of is true for all of our collective bargaining agreements as well. All of our collective bargaining agreements have either a step or merit type of
With just meets.
With just meets
meets
standards.
expectations. But
That
we
is
do
correct.
have exceeds. So we have 3, we don't have like significantly exceeds?
No, we don't.
We just have 3.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so you're below, you meet, or you exceed.
Why have exceed? If you're getting your bonus at meets, why do we even have an exceed?
I understand. So, like I said, it's something that I will tell you that is industry standard, and not that means that that's sufficient by any means whatsoever, but the way we are set up, and I'm a big pay-for-performance proponent, but the system that we have currently, it's just not sufficient to be able to do that, which is why we're preparing, and like I said, this is already in the works, to have a better system implemented, where we're asking for volunteers. It's not something that's going to be just run and shoved down the throats by HR, but we're asking for participation champions to create a program so that we have the baseline there available, like a true system that would even be able to support something like that. Right now we don't. And it would take a long time to get there. Now that doesn't mean forever by any means, but you're talking significant training, required for department heads and supervisors and whatnot to be able to implement such a program as well. So we are starting the baby steps for a significant program overhaul to that. But right now we aren't set up to be able to do that effectively with the tool that we currently have in place.
Okay. And I guess I had a question about retroactive, so this is all retroactive.
It is retro to 10-1, that's correct.
And then I guess I had just a little question on the wages and compensation, the base range. So we've got firefighter, driver, and then fire medic. So really, we're phasing out firefighter only because everybody has to be a medic, correct?
We want the patch.
Yeah, and then when they hire in, the range is 46,000 to 73,000 for October of '21. Is that based on years of experience somewhere else? How do you determine where you fall in when you're a new hire?
So in specific to fire, because we have different collective bargaining agreements that are different, but specific to fire, they start at the bottom. So they start at the entry level.
Regardless of their years of experience somewhere else?
That is correct.
Really?
Yes.
So somebody can come in from New York City with 10 years of fire experience and they're going to get hired in at, 58 if they're a fire medic?
That is correct.
Why is that?
So the different collective bargaining units have different values, right? And so I will tell you again, talking about industry standard and the norm, this is typical in the fire industry that you start at the minimum. Now, both our collective bargaining agreements for police and for CWA allow to pay for experience. Police does it regularly, CWA does not, even though they have it in the contract that allows for it. So now, in terms of how things are changing in such a competitive market, is that something for the future that the union perhaps should take under consideration? Sure. But again, it would be something that the union would have to agree to allow them to do so.
Okay, and then,
And if I may, so again, this is a transition, this contract. It's a transition from the old way of looking at a step plan, so, to a bigger look with ranges. So across the nation, when you go into a fire service aspect, whether it's New York coming here, or me going to New York, you come in based on years of service with that agency. So you come in as firefighter, step one, pay grade 1. And then as you gain years of service there, wherever that is, then you start increasing by, those pay grades.
Yeah.
Understand your concern.
okay.
But this is something the union, this is the way they want.
Yeah,
This
I
is
mean-
not management,
Yeah,
this
no.
is,
Yeah, yeah. And there was, I know, in a lot of our in the shade discussions, there were some comparators of surrounding municipalities in our region, as well as how do they compare with our police force and their contract, and that wasn't attached to this agenda in any way. I mean,
I can certainly share.
Okay.
I can make available to the
okay.
council.
I'd just like to have an understanding of that with the final numbers here.
I just want citizens to understand these are good questions, but this is already bargained.
Yep.
We agreed to all this. The union has voted on it, and they've ratified the contract. So we really don't have any latitude to change anything at this point.
Correct. Other than to approve or not approve the contract.
Right. And if we
again-
didn't approve, that would create its own set of
Right.
issues.
And as I said, I trust you, I trust the process.
Sure.
But I do have questions, and as we have these attachments to the agenda, and they're meaningful, and I just like, clarification, which I've gotten, which is fantastic.
I appreciate
Other
you looking at the documents.
Other questions or comments? Consent?
Yes.
Yep.
4.1.
Approve the funding agreement between the City of Clearwater and the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority to provide enhanced Jolly Trolley service during spring break.
Mr. Lavery.
Good morning, Mike Lavery with the City Manager's Office. This item is to approve funding 50% of enhanced Jolly Trolley service to and from Clearwater Beach from March 1st through April 30th through the PSTA. The total expected cost is $176,686. The city's 50% share is $88,343. The service has been very successful since 2017. In 2020, it started well, but was quickly shut down by the pandemic, and again was not pursued in 2021 for the same reason. This year, the park and ride location will be Old City Hall, with the Pinellas County Garage at Osceola and Court Street, providing overflow parking on the weekends. One trolley will be added Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., and 2 trolleys Friday through Sunday from 10 a.m. to midnight. This service will provide 30-minute frequency on the weekdays and 15-minute frequency on Fridays on the weekends. And for the 5 busiest weekends, 2 when local schools have their spring break, and 3 for the Sugar Sand Festival, an additional trolley will also be added. Cassandra Borchers from the PSTA is here if we need any clarification or further information, and with that I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Lavery? Consent? 5.1. Thank you, Ms.
Authorize a
Borchers.
purchase order to 10-8 Fire Equipment, Inc. of Bradenton, Florida for the purchase of one new Pierce heavy-duty velocity pumper and declare G2610 surplus.
Good morning, Mayor, Council, Scott Ellis, Fire Chief, Clearwater Fire Rescue. This request for your approval is for the purchase of one velocity pumper engine from 10-8 Fire Equipment, who is the local dealer for Pierce fire apparatus, for the amount of $718,190. This engine will be replacing engine 48, which is located over there by the Long Center off of Belcher. And then that unit that's currently in service that will be placed in a reserve status, and vehicle G2610 will be declared surplus with your approval as well. This engine meets our replacement schedule guidelines. Clearwater Fire Rescue has utilized Pierce Manufacturing due to the quality apparatus they provide, which meets the operational needs of our department. Additionally, this engine will be similar as all the other engines which we just recently purchased, the two for engine 49 and engine 51. And that provides consistency and familiarization for the units, provide more efficiency for our firefighters and mechanics. The reason we're bringing this one to you so early is that this one is on the CIP budget for 22, but Pierce is having a significant increase in their prices come January 31st. So if we are able to approve this one, we can get this truck for that cost savings that would be up to $50,000 to $70,000 as their price increases by ordering it now as opposed to ordering in October. It is on a CIP budget and penny budget for the 22 fiscal year. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm a little surprised they're honoring May 2020 prices.
It was a surprise as well. Yes, that's correct. So they are. This is the biggest increase as from our salesperson that's seen in Pierce in his history that he's been with them.
Are there any other apparatus we should be? Not that I want to go out and go on a spending spree, but
yeah, not that we're slated for at this time.
All right, Councilmember Albritton.
Yeah, just curious. Even used cars in this market are going for way over value. So, what would be the surplus value of the G2610?
Those units, right, when we surplus them, we usually send them to the Tampa Machinery Auction. And the prices that we've gotten from there, I know the brand new one's about $700,000, but honestly, we only get, usually when it goes to a surplus at the auction, somewhere between $8,000 and $15,000. It's not a significant amount of money at all. But so 2610, once it goes to machinery auction, then we'll have a better idea how much we'd get for that.
Our code doesn't allow you to park an old fire truck in your driveway.
Put a for sale sign on it.
Don't get the idea.
Well, we had actually, I had talked with Mr. Maxwell several times during the last couple months about taking one of these that we've had to try and donate it. It'd be about only with council approval, as some of the tornadoes that hit through Kentucky wiped out many departments. I mean, totally all their stuff, or the events out there out west and stuff like that. So it's always something we're always looking at, but that's about the value as we look at that. It's about $8,000 to $15,000 on an engine.
All right, thanks.
Councilmember Beckman.
Yeah, I had a question when you mentioned your replacement schedule guidelines. Are those based on, I'm sure it's actuarial stuff, but is it just the years, or is it the number of fires that this heavy-duty velocity frontline pumper actually goes to and is utilized?
So what it's based off of is past history on what these, and corresponding to what we're paying for maintenance on those things as they start to get older in service life. It's not just the mileage that gets really wears on this apparatus. It's also the pumping capability. So you're not putting a lot of miles, but when you're pumping at a fire for 2 hours, that is like driving 70, 80 miles an hour for 2 hours. So it's the wear and tear that you have to figure that in there as well. The replacement schedule has been right about where we are for our busier units. So please remember, it's our busier units. At about 10 years frontline service, 15 years 5 years in reserve, and that's about a 15-year age on that piece of equipment. When we turn them in, they're pretty wore out. Now, we have companies that don't have that amount of alarms. So we look at those on a case-by-case basis to say, well, they'll probably last 15 years frontline service, 5 years in reserve, just because they're not running the streets as much as the other ones.
Okay, and when you say companies, that means like fire stations?
That's correct, that's correct.
Okay, because the other one, I was like, how often do we fight fires? Have 2-hour, water dispensing?
So fires are always down, which is a good thing. That's our fire prevention. That's a hats off to our fire prevention. However, again, just like every other department, it's about 85% EMS calls, 15% is about fire calls. And even those EMS calls, you're sitting on scene for quite some time at that engine at a high idle.
Okay, thank you.
Consent?
Yes.
6.1. Thank you, Chief.
Approve a tax service broker agreement with Ballbrook Tax Credits LLC to manage the transfer of ownership of the City of Clearwater's voluntary cleanup tax credits.
Mr. Warrington.
Good morning, Mayor and Commission. This is Chuck Warrington, Executive Director of the Clearwater Gas System. This first item is our approval to accept the bid of a tax service broker to sell our Brownfield voluntary cleanup tax credits.
So do you want to explain for the public a little further what that really means?
Well, our site, our Clearwater Gas site was the site of an old manufactured gas plant site, and so it had a lot of constituents in the ground, needed to be cleaned up. So as we've redone the whole site, and we've worked with the Department of Environmental Protection with the consent agreement over the years, and then we got approval from them to do a brownfield, which basically will cap the whole project with pavement, so that we preserve the integrity of the site while the constituents wear off over time. And so by doing that, then you can sell brownfield tax credits that the state allows us to sell. Other people buy those and need to use that in order to in the course of their business. So this amounts to about $785,000 worth of tax credits we're selling. We're getting about 91 cents on the dollar for those tax credits. That's for our site, as well as some brownfield sites that the Economic Development Department has as well. They've got about 10% of the process.
Questions for Mr. Warrington? Councilmember Beckman.
Yeah, so this was a confusing agenda item for me as far as voluntary cleanup tax credits. So my notation, and I think you explained it, is other municipalities pay us because we cleaned up brownfields and they didn't. And so the federal government gives us money for cleaning up our brownfields.
Allows us.
And then when, let's say, I'm going to just pick on, let's say, Charlotte, North Carolina, if they have a brownfield that they're not cleaning up, but they'd like to do something, they can buy our brownfield credits?
That's true. That's
and
right.
so the Charlotte, North Carolina land remains contaminated?
Well, until they do similar, someday later on, they may do the similar in order to get tax credits where they are. But yeah, that's the way the tax credits work.
And what are they going to use with their tax credits? Why are they buying them? To do what? Because they're not cleaning up their brownfields.
Ms. Mahoney.
Hi, Laura Mahoney, Assistant City Attorney. The volunteer tax credit program is through the state.
Okay.
So anyone that participates in the program, goes under agreement to clean up, completes the cleanup, is given a tax certificate.
Mm-hmm.
It offsets corporate taxes. So if the city doesn't have corporate taxes, they can market those in the open market. And that's what we've done.
This is through the state, it offsets corporate taxes.
Yes. And since the city doesn't pay corporate
We'd be negligent if we didn't sell these.
so we sell them. And I believe we had 5 bidders that bid the agreement.
They were
and
pretty
this
close.
was the most money on the dollar.
Yeah.
They were very close.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of different tax credits besides this that other corporations buy.
And this is not the first time the city's done this. The Brownfield program has been in place for a number of years, and Economic Development's had and done several of these over time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel comfortable with whatever it is. I need to be able to make sense and explain it, so I can sit down with Mr. Margolis Thursday, and he can present it like a 4th grader or something.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bunker.
I asked my friend Google about this. I had put in the browser there, why would you sell your voluntary tax credit? And then it showed that, if you can't use them, if you don't have those in this area, you can sell them. So that makes sense.
We don't have the liability to offset. Councilmember Albritton.
Yeah, there's lots of different tax credits, what I was gonna say, and we actually have a project that was funded by tax credits, which is our first workforce housing project at the old fire station. That's a different tax credit, but that's something, it's just an incentive to help with different things. There's also, California's big with carbon credits. If you can offset something that uses, gas and then turn it into green, you can sell those as well, so.
Mr. Margolis?
Sure, I mean, just to kind of explain the basic history of it, because it is an odd concept, I think, for people who are not in the industry necessarily. So this program was created by the state back in the 90s when there was a growing awareness of the problems with environmental contamination, but a lot of private industry didn't want to invest in cleaning up the environment. So to incentivize private industry to do things that were otherwise not in their economic best interest, the state said, well, we're going to allow Florida companies to offset some of their normal corporate tax. Normally in Florida, we charge 5.5% corporate tax, and the state said if a corporation wants to offset that tax, we will give them tax credits for doing cleanup work. But then government came back, and a lot of local government, it said, wait a minute, if we do this work, we don't pay corporate tax because we're a city, and so what do we get out of doing this? And so the state agreed that if a tax exempt entity like the government participates in or does things like this, then the government can transfer or sell those tax credits to private industry. And that's how we effectively benefit from doing a lot of this very expensive work otherwise.
So we benefit, but the dirty land still sits there. There's still dirty land sitting there that they got some benefit. They got some excuse of cleaning it up, right? They got a little pass for cleaning it up, right?
I don't know if I would say that the buyer, the way I would describe it is that the buyer or acquirer of the tax credit is benefiting from the work ultimately that we did. That's how I would characterize it, but I'd be happy to hear.
Well, the tax credit's not issued unless someone cleans up.
Right, like someone had to do work.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what dirty land you're talking about.
Well, we cleaned up, and so that's great, and we're a public entity, so we don't get the tax benefit. But these people that are buying it from us didn't do their cleanup.
Well, we don't know that they even have a dirty land. I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, why else would they be buying it?
Because they're buying it for pennies on the dollar?
They're
So
getting
it's
a
a tax
9%
credit.
discount.
Right.
So it's a tax credit that's not even related to brownfields or anything like that? It's just a tax
Correct.
credit? Oh, I thought it was related to
It just offsets.
their brownfields.
No, they broker them in the market,
Oh,
so anyone
it's
with a
just a
corporate
tax credit?
liability can bid
Okay.
on it.
Right.
Now it makes sense. It's
Right,
not
it
like
is.
they're, instead of them cleaning up things, they're gonna pay
Right,
somebody
no.
else to clean up somewhere, you know what I
No.
mean? Okay,
Right, it was
Got it.
issued because the work was done, but the acquirer may have nothing to do with anything.
Exactly.
They're just looking to save money.
got it. Thank you.
It's
That's
a very
now I get it.
confusing program.
It is.
Yeah, all good, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
6.2.
Accept a gas utility easement from Cedar Hill Apartment for the construction, installation, and maintenance of a gas utility facilities at property located 851 East Klosterman Road, Tarpon Springs, Florida.
This is an easement for a parcel of property. It's an apartment complex that uses gas at various locations in the project, and these are easements to get to through their property to the service points for the buildings.
Questions? Councilmember Beckman.
So this is new construction?
Yes.
And how many apartments? About? I mean,
I don't know that.
Okay.
I apologize.
that's okay. Just, I tried to look it up too to see what the size of the development was and couldn't find the number.
It's a project.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
And also in Tarpon Springs. I
It's in
would add.
Tarpon Springs.
Any other questions? 6.3.
Accept a gas utility easement from City Square LLC for the construction, installation, and maintenance of gas utility facilities located at 512 Cleveland Street, Clearwater, Florida.
This is the City Square project at 512 Cleveland Street. And it's an existing, it's an existing facility that we didn't have an easement on the main line, so we're getting an easement now for it and providing a new service as they modernize this building.
So there are going to be upgrades to it?
The building is being upgraded, I believe.
Questions? 7.1.
Authorize a guaranteed maximum price proposal for Course Construction, Inc. of Pinellas Park, Florida, for the construction of a new pier and floating dock at Clearwater Community Sailing Center. Approve a first quarter budget amendment and allocate $400,000 from general fund reserves to the project.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor, Council. Jim Hallius, Director of Parks and Recreation. The item that we have before you this morning is for an agreement with Course Construction in the amount of $222,000 for the replacement of 2 docks at the Clearwater Community Sailing Center. There are 2 docks currently located out there, one to the north and one to the south of the property. Both docks require replacement and are deemed unsuitable for use. I will tell you at this time the southern dock currently is inoperable, and I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding this item.
Questions for Mr. Hallios? Councilmember Beckman.
Yeah, I had 2 questions. Number one, if things are in such dire need of replacement, repair, maintenance, that we have to pull $400,000 out of general fund reserves and some other funds from other projects, why didn't we know about this when we set the budget last year? And can you explain the change in scope at Jack Russell? You know, what are we pulling back from in order to make this happen, and why didn't we pre-plan for it?
Sure. This item is, we actually were attempting to address this in further years out within the CIP process, but unfortunately the need to do it in a more immediate sense necessitated us moving this up. We initially looked at maybe doing 1 dock, but knowing that 2 needed to be replaced, the most cost-sensitive way to do it will be to replace both docks at the same time, saving money as far as mobilization costs and things of that nature. So that's why that kind of, you see this unsudden expense come up as we move this up in the process, knowing that had to be done. Now, as far as the Jack Russell project, that was for the remodel of the bathrooms out at the Jack Russell Stadium Complex. We still have the bathrooms out there. They're, for the amount of use that we get at that park, with St. Pete College and with Clearwater High School, we feel that the facilities that are there now are adequate, and that there's no need to upgrade those.
So we felt like we were gonna, you know, remodel them, and then we've changed our mind. I know that, you know, I know that residents want parks open. I know they want these fields unlocked and utilized. Even on a real casual basis, to be able to go and play kickball or catch or kick field goals or whatever. And so, you know, I think we need to have our facilities up and open. And I mean, if you think the bathrooms are adequate, but you're saying the bathrooms are adequate for how they're used right now. But if we want to look at, we're looking at our Parks and Rec strategic plan this year, and if residents and others are saying we want more resident use of these fields, we might want to have, you know, these bathrooms improved. I don't know, it just, I question pulling $400,000 out of general funds when I'm pounding, you know, the table for a mere $250,000 for some case management and street outreach and other social services that will help our residents in need here. And now we've got, you know, I don't know, it's just, to me it was a concerning agenda item. But I know the sailing center, I know it's utilized, I know things get in disrepair and they need to be improved, but
yeah, and to speak to Jack Russell, the bathrooms there, that is not a park facility. It's more of an athletic complex. So it wouldn't, under any circumstances, that facility, the way it's maintained and utilized, it would not be open to the public where they would need to utilize the bathrooms like a Crest Lake Park or something like that. So that's where we get into looking at, you know, they're adequate for the uses that it's used at. And as far to speak to the 400,000. Yes, it is an outlay, but you know, when we look at what we spend, you know, having an operator out there, and instead of us operating it, because it is our facility, you know, I look at a facility of this similar footprint like the Clearwater Beach Recreation Center. Our operating operating costs on an annual basis for that center are about $510,000. So, you know, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another, but you look at it that way also as a cost savings of not having to operate the center. And, you know, regardless, we'd be responsible for the capital because that's how it is in the lease, but we do have that savings of having them operating.
And Jack Russell is not, I mean, that's not some place that a family could go out and play kickball.
Correct.
That is reserved for baseball purposes.
Yes.
Right? Why is the Pier 60 and Sailing Center together? Why wouldn't they be separate line items?
And that's what we're looking to do. How this initially came is about, I would say, maybe 4 years ago. Pier 60 and the Sailing Center migrated over to Parks and Recreation from Marine Aviation, and we just kept it as one CIP because of the way it was set up. But as we've worked through the process and we've come across these things, and then, you know, there's some repairs that we've done out at Pier 60, we've noticed that there needs to be a separation between the two of them to keep better track of the project on how we spend our money.
Yeah, it seems like they ought to be standalones.
Yes.
But the Sailing Center does wonderful work, not only as a sailing center, but also for those with disabilities. We have great camps out there and other things. It is a unique facility.
Definitely.
Other questions? Consent?
Yep.
All right. 7.2.
Approve First Amendment to lease agreement between Clearwater for Youth, Inc. and the City of Clearwater.
Jim Halios again, Director of Parks and Recreation. In April of 2005, Council entered into a 5-year agreement with Clearwater for Youth with the option for 5-year renewals. Since the initial time of this agreement, Clearwater for Youth has desired more space due to their expanding of their programs. The City of Clearwater has more space for Clearwater for Youth to utilize, and in recognition of this, Clearwater for Youth will be adding an additional $100,000 a year on what they give to co-sponsor programs within the City of Clearwater. So initially, we got $100,000 for every 5-year renewal. So now instead of getting that $100,000 every 5 years, Clearwater for Youth donates that $100,000 every year as reflected in this new amendment to the agreement.
Questions? Vice Mayor.
My question is basically for Mr. Margolis. I sit on the Board of Trustees of Clearwater for Youth. The fact that we are giving the city, we as Clearwater for Youth are giving the city an additional $100,000 does not create a conflict for me as a council member, does it?
If you're on the board for Clearwater for Youth, the proper way to handle that is simply to disclose it, as you now have. It does not create a conflict in the sense of special economic gain to you or special economic cost.
There's no economic.
Right, it's nonprofit, so I think having disclosed
We're not
it.
paid to be on the board, we get nothing, other than it costs us money or more than anything else, because we are expected to help raise money for the.
Give or get.
Right.
That's right, give or get out. That's it.
No special economic gain or loss. I don't see any reason for you to recuse yourself, but I do think it's appropriate for you to disclose it as you now have, so thank you.
Should we leave it off consent so that disclosure can be made on Thursday as well, or?
That's probably the safest course of action.
Okay. Councilmember Beckman.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of clarified. I was wondering, is the $100,000 a check, or is it like in-kind donations?
It's in-kind donations to co-sponsor programs within the community, and then Clearwater for Youth provides us a financial report every year where we can see that those donations have been made.
Okay, and then the last thing, I guess, is the lesser in-kind services. So as we have if we have contracts with different organizations that lease space out of our rec centers or whatever, the fields and all that, when we enter into, hopefully, a contract with a energy management company such as Synergistics, are all of these people who hold leases required to follow the guidance of our energy management company organization that says, things about zoned heating or thermostats or different behavior requirements that we are all going to have to follow in the city? Will those people who contract with us have to do the same?
I think I'd have to refer to the city attorney on that one just because of the leases. But again, we are responsible we take the costs of all utilities, so I'd imagine that any of that would be reflected in there also.
Well, and there's the thing. If we take the cost of all utilities, what's their incentive to change their behavior or to alter what they're doing? You know what I mean? They're like, yeah, if you told me I have to zone this and, whatever, they're like, why? I'm not paying for any utilities. So I'm wondering, how these contracts are going to affect our money-saving opportunities when we do have synergistics on board that says, this is the plan. And we're like, well, great, we can do the plan 8 hours a day in our buildings, but when we lease them out to others, we can't require them to do X, Y, and Z. And there go our savings, as much, some of them.
And with an agreement like this, Clearwater for Youth, and then we have the Clearwater Neighborhood Family Center that's out at the Ross Norton Recreation Center. They traditionally operate within our operating hours. So should we put in, room sensors on lights, and then we have more of an automated temperature control system, that'll follow along as well, because it's in the activity of our kind of daily use is that. And anything extracurricular outside of those, our operating hours, well, per our agreement, they're only allotted certain times when they can do that, so we would factor in those other things as well outside of the traditional agreement.
I think we can add things to agreements, but I also think we ought to believe that our partners are also responsible actors and not necessarily think the worst of them. I know a lot of those people, and I think they're as responsible as the city is to be good stewards of any resources that they're given. So, consent? Oh, you can't. We'll leave that off. 7.3.
Approve a second amendment to lease agreement between Clearwater Golf Club LLC and the City of Clearwater.
Jim Hallius again, Director of Parks and Recreation. This item is for an extension to the agreement that we currently have with Clearwater Golf Club. In April of 2011, we entered into a new 20-year agreement with Clearwater Golf Club LLC for the initial term of that lease expiring in 2031. Clearwater Golf Club has come to us and requested that they do some capital improvements at the course. So these are much needed capital improvements, and in kind of lieu of them doing those capital improvements, we've worked with them to have a little more cost certainty, or not cost certainty, a little more certainty on their lease. So we've asked for this extension of the lease out to 2041. And the repairs that they're looking to do out there is a new sodding of the fairways with a different grass variety that's more drought tolerant and requires less water, so there's a sustainability piece that we're looking at there. Replacing the cart path, and then capital maintenance to the parking lots, pedestrian bridge, HVAC system in the clubhouse. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Hallius? Vice Mayor?
No questions per se. It's more along the line. I play golf at Clearwater Country Club regularly and have for all my life. And I can tell you the president operator has done a great job recently of upgrading the greens themselves, but the fairways are hit or miss at best. And I know he's committed to, with the new technology in agriculture and new grass strains and whatnot, he is looking at really making it a much better experience for all the people that enjoy it. So I think this is a very reasonable request and a good move for the city to make.
Other questions or comments? Councilmember Beckman.
I'll just do a quick comment. As I spoke to Mr. Margolis last week about this one a little bit, I was just taken aback by the length of time, the extension to 2041. I mean, that seems like a long time for us not knowing what housing needs might be and all that stuff. But, we can just pay to get out of the lease. I mean, right, there are ways we can get out of the lease if we need to change it in some way. But it is a pretty long lease, 2041.
Well, his present lease runs till 2031, and this is a 10-year extension beyond that, giving him time to recoup,
His investment, yeah.
$1 million plus investment. So I don't see that as unrealistic at all.
Yeah, and I will add, kind of looking into, when we had the whole discussion with the landing staff, we looked into what it would cost for the city to operate a golf course. And, when I look at Largo's budget, they're at about $1 million, and they lose $250,000 a year. So again, to have an operator that is, one, willing to operate it, but also to put in $1 million and steadily improve that golf course, I think it's a good deal for the city.
That's what I was going to say. Largo's deal compared to our deal is horrendous. Are you saying that you'd be willing to close the golf course and turn it into housing?
No, I did not
Councilmember
say
Beck?
that. I did not say
Well,
that.
no, you said we don't know what our housing needs are going to be.
Well, we don't, and I mean, I think, as we face housing challenges, we have to look at building up more. As much as I don't want to put stresses on the infrastructure, but that's another, conversation. But the fact is, we have no land for our housing here. We have to, and so, no, I'm just saying, it's a long lease, and we don't know what the continued challenges are going to be here in Clearwater.
But I think our citizens also want green space. At
They
least
sure
that's
do.
what I've heard.
They let us know.
So that's an interesting.
They did. Nope, I'm not,
You're
just,
the one who brought up. I just
Yeah.
want a clarifying question.
all good.
So, consent?
Yeah.
All right. 8.1.
Appoint Michael Kuchar to the Board of Trustees, Clearwater Police Supplementary Pension Plan.
Officer Riley.
Morning. I'm James Riley. I am a trustee with the Clearwater Police Supplemental Pension Plan. And in keeping with the provisions of Florida State 185, which states that we have to have two current residents on the board, we have a trustee, Dirk Curls, who's indicated that he did not want to continue past his October 31st, 2021 nomination. His term will be filled by a Michael Kuchar, who is also a legal resident of the city of Clearwater. The Board of Trustees of the Clearwater Police Supplemental Pension Plan recommends that Clearwater resident, which has been verified, Michael Kuchar, be appointed to the Board of Trustees. Mr. Kuchar has agreed to complete the 4-year term as trustee, replacing Dirk Curls for the period commencing January 20th, 2022 to October 31st, 2025.
Any questions? Vice Mayor.
This is different because I know Mr. Curls very well, and I know he's, done a good job, but he's just like, it's enough. This is a very important position. It takes a lot of work and I think Mr. Kuchar, former police officer, retired police officer, and with the work that his wife does, his wife isn't going to sit in for him, is she? She's too busy already with everything she does. She's an amazing woman. But I think Mike is a perfect fit for this to take Dirk's place.
Councilmember Beckman.
I just had, as part of my education, can you just explain who are the Board of Trustees and what is their function?
We are appointed. We have 2 Clearwater residents that sit on the board, and we have 3 of us that are sworn. And what we do is we manage the supplemental pension plan, and we give recommendations, but we're guided by professional entities, stockbrokers and financial institutions.
Investment people.
So we're not out there just making decisions on it, where we're going to invest. We have questions, they'll answer it, and we go with what's the most economical and safest for the fund.
Okay, that makes sense, thanks.
Other questions? Consent?
Yes.
8.2.
Approve an agreement between the City of Clearwater Block Safety of Atlanta, Georgia for license plate reader, equipment, monitoring, and maintenance.
Morning again, Deputy Chief Eric Gandy. The police department got council approval in 2020 for the real-time crime center These license plate readers are extension of that and dovetail with the Real-Time Crime Center, providing real-time intelligence and the ability to intercept vehicles by reading their license plates in significant crimes. Interestingly enough, this system, we've been in this technology for almost 10 years now, and we had several trailer-based systems and several mobile systems mounted to vehicles. This is the first we've found that's completely standalone, doesn't have to wire to any infrastructure, and is completely independently solar powered. The unique part about that is we did a test and evaluation of the platform because we were concerned. We've had other solar powered systems that required us to bring them in out of the field every so often and recharge the batteries. This was not the case with this system, and it was quite productive. I've got some updated numbers regarding some of the recoveries during the test phase. So 69 recovered stolen vehicles, 20 stolen plates, 21 wanted subjects, and 22 missing endangered folks. So in theory, you have a silver alert, and you could import the license plate of that vehicle into the system, and we would get an alert, and through the Real-Time Crime Center and our dispatch center, bring officers to the last known location of that vehicle. And during the testing phase, we also had a bank robbery on South Fort Harrison that it was instrumental in resolving, as well as a shooting in a fast food restaurant on the other side of town. And again, the LPR system was instrumental in those things. And this contract is for a single year with 3 mutually agreed upon extensions, and it's for 20 of these 6-mount systems.
Any questions for Deputy Chief Gandy? Councilmember Bunker.
No question, just very impressive stats.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Beckman.
Yeah. Does it read front or back plates or both? Or?
So the way the system is mounted, it's for rear-facing plates. Now, we could have a situation, depending on the configuration of an intersection or where this thing might be located, that could pick up on a front plate. But in Florida, we're predominantly rear plate, but so we would have situations where you could, but it would also pick up on the rear plate. So.
Okay. I saw it, well, first of all, 3 Cheers that's solar operated. I saw it tested on Gulf Boulevard. So it reads, I have a question about the speed that it reads. So Gulf Boulevard is pretty, I think it's 30 miles an hour. But will it read at faster speeds?
Yes, it will. I don't know the ceiling on it, but it was up close to triple digits in some of the systems under ideal conditions. So it's been quite beneficial, and we've seen some positive results. And the contract allows for any issues with the system down the road, we contact the vendor and resolve those. So it's all incorporated into this contract.
Fantastic. And then I guess I had one where you reported the stats that are real impressive, as Councilmember Bunker said, but you've got the Baker Act assessments from, was that like from erratic driving?
What that would be is if someone's entered as a missing endangered or check on the welfare based on a mental health status situation, that could be imported into the system, and we could locate those folks as well. I will tell you that 30% or more of drivers in Florida don't have insurance. If we set these things for those low-level offenses, we don't have enough cops in the city or the county to apprehend all those folks. So we set the bar pretty high, and we restrict access to a very limited number of people for that reason.
But again, that Baker Act, is that like if somebody says my relative is...
Yes, my relative is potentially suicidal or a danger to others due to a underlying mental health condition, and could you check on their welfare? And they left in a vehicle. In those circumstances, we could import that. And again, the bar's pretty high. It tends to be something that's a danger to self or others.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Consent? Yep. 9.1.
Approve the request from the owner property address 2637 Winding Wood Drive, Clearwater, to vacate 12 feet of a platted drainage and utility easement.
First, a very what will be many appearances, I'm sure. Suzanne Kramer is our new real estate coordinator.
Good morning, Council. I'm Suzanne Kramer, new Real Estate Services Coordinator.
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much. The purpose of this vacation is to eliminate an encroachment of existing patio pavers. The city does not have any utilities in the easement area, and all city staff do not object.
Any questions? 9.2.
Approve the final plat for Unity Church and Discovery Academy of Science, whose physical address is 2465 Nursery Road.
Vaughn.
Morning, Kyle Vaughn, Engineering Department. This plat will create a two-lot subdivision. Lot 1 containing approximately 2 acres, Lot 2 approximately 5 acres, and was approved through the DRC on October 18th, 2021. And I'll take your questions.
Any questions for Mr. Vaughn?
A two-lot subdivision?
Yes.
Do you know how many homes about?
It's for a church
It's
and a small school.
institution.
Well, okay, I had, a year and a half ago or so, I met with the people at the Unity Church. They had reached out about selling or developing and having affordable housing and things like that. So I was just wondering what are they deciding to do here with this?
It's for future place of worship use and expansion of existing school use.
Okay. Oh, subdivision, meaning you're dividing it up, not like a home subdivision is coming. Okay.
Right.
Got it, thanks.
Other questions? Consent?
Yeah.
9.3.
Approve a purchase order increase to Park Mobile LLC of Atlanta, Georgia for reimbursement of transaction fees for mobile parking.
Mr. Elkins.
Good morning, ma'am. City Council, Jeremy Allshouse, Parking Manager. Since June 18th, 2020, the City Council had approved Park Mobile as our mobile provider. They did an assessment at that point to determine for every transaction, 35 cents is collected that goes back to Park Mobile. The parking system maintains the rest. They have estimated it was roughly going to be 600,000 transactions. Unfortunately, they've underestimated. It's going to be more like 1 million transactions over the life of that deal, which takes us till January 31st, 2023. So we're asking for another $135,000 to be added there. It's not extra money that's being incurred. It's extra money we're collecting on their behalf, but budgetarily it comes to us and then it has to be moved along to them. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councilmember Beckman.
Sorry. So we like prepay? I mean, if we're gonna pay them their portion, 35 cents per, transaction, don't we just settle up every quarter or something?
So we're not prepaying. It's a budgetary process issue. We collect. We had to estimate how many transactions were going to be done over the life of that for budgetary purposes.
Okay.
So, but the reality of it is that we've well exceeded those number of transactions. So we're still collecting that 35 cents for them for every transaction, and monthly we pay them back.
Okay.
So we're budgetarily we're over, but again, we haven't spent any
It'll
extra
even
money.
out because
Correct.
okay.
Correct. It's we're just holding it for them temporarily. We're not prepaying them. We're paying as we go. But when we originally set the budget, we set it too low because we didn't know Park Mobile was going to take off the way that it did.
Vice Mayor and then Councilmember Albrecht.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what I'm wondering here is, first off, all I can hear is my dad in my ear saying the city of Clearwater is punch drunk on parking revenues. If we're paying this much money to a company just, for whatever, but if our agreement says we're going to pay 35 cents per transaction, okay, however many transactions we do, we're giving them 35 cents. Why do we have to come approve this? It's part of the contract. It is what it is. I don't understand why it even has to come to us to take action.
Again, a budgetary process. We had to put an amount. I wasn't here at the time either. So an amount had to go into the budget based upon an estimate, and the estimate was low.
And really, this is a purchasing issue as well. I mean, the council has certain purchasing authority. The city manager's office has a certain purchasing authority. This exceeds that, so this is a council purchase approval. So we need to go through this process so that we can issue a PO so that they can be paid off of that PO as the costs are incurred.
Councilmember Albrecht.
So the good news is we raised a lot more parking revenue.
Correct. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
I just wanna bring that out.
Again, we did not spend any more money than we
Yeah.
were. We're making a lot of money on Park Mobile.
Yeah, and I gotta tell you, I wish I invented Park Mobile, because it's a great app, and I've seen it in other cities, I've seen it in other countries, basically, and I think it's great. We don't have to buy and maintain parking meters, you know, so it's to me, it's well worth the 35 cents. It's such a simple thing, and what I like about it is people can pay through their phone, and it does a countdown and lets you know if you're in a restaurant, it'll tell you, hey, you're parking things up, and right there you can put more money on the parking. So that to me is a great, you know, I understand it's we've exceeded what we budgeted for parking revenue, and they're getting 35 cents. We're just, you know, saying we got to pay them more. So, yeah.
Councilmember Bunker.
You know, the Vice Mayor just addressed what I was going to address, the fact that we're making substantially more and paying them their
due
share. Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
No, but I guess since you guys have said we've made substantially more, I think it's good to note that, you know, when you show us the numbers, if we are making substantially more, that's great, as long as the residents know that when they use this, they get half-price parking. And so that's where our residents need to know that that's available.
Well, in addition to, Councilman Beckman, in addition to the half-price parking for residents, their 35-cent fee is waived. So that doesn't even account for the residents.
So all of our revenue is not from residents, or from, it's not from people who have registered as residents.
Oh,
Right.
yes. Oh, absolutely, yes. It's predominantly from
The majority is not resident.
non-resident, yes, that's correct.
Is there a point, though, when we've gone, you know, with over 1 million transactions, that 35 cents diminishes so that all of our patrons are paying less, or there's no break points on that?
So there is competition in the market. Some other companies are coming out and being more competitive with that 35 cent. I mean, the 35 cents, as was stated earlier, we're not paying any infrastructure on meters or anything like that. So it's really a good deal for the city. We don't pay anything. But as far as your question, that'll be meted out in the next negotiations to renew the contract or go with the new provider.
We have had some complaints with lag time between somebody re-upping their parking and then our metering people not getting that time and us issuing tickets. Is that something we're addressing?
Well, we've asked them to work on that. Technology is great until it fails us. And so we've certainly made that aware to them. They're aware of it. They work on it on a constant basis. There's so many pieces along that chain. The person's phone that they enter it on, the system to transmit it to the server, that server contacts another server, and then communicates back to the enforcement handheld. So there's so many in that chain that unfortunately there can be. And we've tested it then after those most recent complaints, we were out testing it to see, and we got it down. It will take, it's not instantaneous, but usually it's under 2 minutes. And obviously if anybody.
Should we put in a buffer though?
That's a great question, and I can ask that. I have no problem asking the vendors that question to put that in, but there is kind of an industry standard as far as nobody's going to tell us it's going to be instantaneous. I don't think we're going to be able to find, if we put that restriction on there, I don't know that we're going to be able to have.
But that's kind of my point. Why wouldn't you just give a 5-minute, if you are saying it's 2 minutes for the data to be transferred, why wouldn't you put a 5-minute buffer before you actually give a ticket? Can't that be programmed into the software as well?
Well, but there's no way to know that if a transaction was made or not. So you basically have to wait 5 minutes after you identified every vehicle violation.
That's my point. Can't you build that into the software so that you give people a 5-minute reprieve automatically.
I
Do you see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying. I've asked recently about some, not for that specifically, but for something else, and technologically wise, the companies aren't really prepared to do something like that.
They do work for us, right?
What I'm saying is they don't have the technology to make that work. They're trying it in other places and not having good luck.
Okay, any other questions? Consent?
Thank you.
9.4.
Approve supplemental work order one to Advanced Engineering and Design Inca Pinellas Park for additional design of Nash Street and Old Clearwater Bay improvements.
Good morning, I'm Elliot Schoberg, the Engineering Assistant Director. In February of '21, the city entered into an agreement for the Gulf to Bay Estates neighborhood to design the reconstruction of it, all the underground infrastructure. This supplemental work order is to include reclaimed water in that neighborhood, which isn't currently there. And part of the driving factor with that is the Senate Bill 64 passed, pushing us to reduce our non-beneficial discharge of reclaimed water. So we thought, while we had this going, we would go ahead and put it in the ground. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Councilmember Beckman.
So as you know, a lot of people, residents have a lot of questions about reclaimed water. And I think it's, it's a good thing and it's a necessary thing and we really have to do it because of that legislation, right? So when I looked at that photo that was attached, it looks like it's going to be a lot of residents, which is fine. So my question is, how and when do you inform residents that it's coming and what they're going to expect with their bill and access and voluntary access and all that stuff and the charges, so that they're not just blindsided? If we can have a plan to let them know what's coming and what it really means to them.
I'm going to lean on the Utilities Director I don't have all the details on that handy.
Okay.
I'm sure Rich can help us out on that.
And when do we expect them to actually be able to hook up to reclaimed water?
Good morning, Rich Gardner, Director of Public Utilities. When a project gets closer to actual construction, we'll we'll inform the impacted customers. Somehow we're not close enough that I know exactly how we'll inform them, but hopefully they see it as an opportunity to save on their irrigation and use some reclaim. As far as construction, I don't know the schedule.
We've got probably another, I'm guessing a year and a half from now, we should be done out there. And I'm probably being a little optimistic, but.
That's all good. I would just say that, so you said you're not sure how you'll inform them. I push for a real diverse, multiple ways of informing them, but having a one-pager that really explains the legislation, explains where that reclaimed water was going and now it's going to be used in, just to really sell it and let people know why we're doing this and what are the benefits of it. Because a lot of people crab about, the cost. Although some people that I was out talking to last week wanted reclaimed and wondered, when is it coming? So, you get all types, but.
Yeah, we expect we'll have to do a lot of public communication to sell the reclaim. It's a valuable commodity. We just need to get it out there.
Thanks.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, the agenda item says Nash Street and Old Clearwater Bay. We got a map of what's going on Nash Street, but there's no reference in the agenda item to Old Clearwater Bay.
Old Clearwater Bay is underway with design, and it has reclaimed water in it or going in it. I don't have that detail exactly, but the initial work order was designed, both of them. It just did not have reclaimed water for Nash Street.
Okay.
And that was in February of 21, we entered into that agreement.
Okay. I was just expecting a map of
both
Old Clearwater Bay at the same time.
This work order only affects the Nash Street area.
Okay.
The supplement.
So tell me a little bit about process and how we are determining where we want to go with reclaimed in the future. I mean, when we first started reclaimed, we targeted neighborhoods that used a lot of potable water for irrigation because we wanted to get them off of having a separate potable water meter, and we knew that they would adopt reclaimed readily because of the cost savings, and originally it was free, as long as they did the hookup. And then as time passed, we had the availability fee and then actual metering. But how are we gonna determine going forward where the low-hanging fruit is? Is it a function of what neighborhoods are using a lot of potable water, or is it a function of how accessible the potable water is to, do the direct boring to get it to the particular neighborhoods, or is it a combination of the above?
I could give you a quick answer on that, but I think I'm gonna let Rich give you the details, but I believe it's, following the reclaim master plan.
He answers the question. We're planning on doing a reclaimed water master plan. So for our solution to Senate Bill 64, we have reclaim use, increasing our reuse at the top of the list. That we want to beneficially use reclaim as much as possible. So we do have a list of some neighborhoods who have requested reclaim, but they did meet the 51% approval of the neighbors. We'll go back out to them. That's low-hanging fruit. Nash Street, it was just obvious to us when we looked at it, where there's room in the street for reclaim, and we'll be able to loop, or in the future, loop our reclaim system, so it was beneficial for that reason. So we'll be looking at other projects as they come up. When we meet developers at the BPRC, we tell them, hey, use reclaim. You can use it for cooling water as well as irrigation. So we're pushing it in many different ways. But the reclaim master plan will be our plan on how we're going to ultimately use it.
And how much access do we have right now?
As far as
the reclaimed, at some point we were going to basically top out. We wouldn't have it, right?
Well, I would say we're using less than 50% of the reclaimed water that's available. So, we need to use 100% of it. It's seasonal as well. Now we're in the drier season, people are using it more. That's why we're going to have to, the reclaim master plan again will tell us how to best use it seasonally.
And when is that going to be complete?
We haven't started it yet, so 2 or 3 years at the best. We have till 2032 to fully implement our plan to meet Senate Bill 64. So we have time.
Okay. Councilmember Beckman.
When we develop that master plan, and you're talking about, you've got some neighborhoods or residents that have requested reclaim but did not meet 51% threshold, you're going to go out to them first and all that stuff, right? I would assume you're also looking at where we already have reclaimed. Isn't it cheaper to just keep building off of where we have it rather than to go to this neighborhood if they're saying they want it and kind of start from ground zero? I mean, we are going to look at the economies of piping all that stuff around, right? It's not just going to be this polka dotted distribution of reclaimed water.
So the master plan will tell us things like that. Where is the most economical to extend the lines? We also don't want to, dig up a bunch of roads that we don't have to. So that's the whole master planning process.
And you said about 1.5 years to have that until it's done, the master plan?
I said 2 or 3 years. I meant to say 2 or 3 years.
No, I didn't.
Can you roll the tape?
2 to 3 years?
You did say 2 to 3
Sorry.
years.
But Rich and his team are looking at it project by project to see if it's economical to add in for a specific project, like Nash Street.
Yeah, Nash Street makes a whole lot of sense because we're going to have the whole street opened up anyway, so there's a lot of economy of scale to go ahead and get it in the ground there.
And when new builders and developers come in, do we have a requirement that they're automatically required to use reclaimed water?
If it's available.
If it's available.
We don't have a requirement.
We don't have
for irrigation, but maybe not some of the other purposes.
What other purposes are there?
It can be used for cooling water. It can be used for gray water systems.
So we do have a requirement that new building and development has to have reclaimed water if it's available for irrigation.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Can we require, would it be best, can we require them to use it for other things as well? Would that be something, I guess that's part of the master plan to look at.
Exactly.
Any other questions? Consent? 9.5.
Approve a work order to Mead and Hunt, Inc. of Tampa, Florida for the citywide transportation mobility assessment.
Skidder.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Tara Kevitt, Engineering Director. This mobility assessment work order will create a baseline of our current traffic system and for future system evaluations. The baseline will allow us to address system deficiencies, areas of congestion, prioritize improvements, evaluate traffic impacts of proposed developments, identify and/or confirm need for traffic signals, and improve safety in a more proactive, holistic, and realistic manner. Once complete, we expect to implement innovative solutions to some of our traffic challenges. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Kibben? Councilmember Beck.
I can't believe we don't already have this information. I mean, I have questions. Is this only for city streets, not for county or state streets? Don't we have this information from FDOT or Forward Pinellas? What are we really looking for? Are we looking at how to funnel traffic to Imagine Clearwater? Is it going to focus on Drew Street? I mean, we've intensely studied Drew Street. It's not the intersection of Belcher and Gulf to Bay because FDOT is doing that. It can't be beach because we know that the beach by design set the numbers based on the capacity of that traffic circle and traffic flow. So what is our, what are we looking to find and make decisions about? Our own roads? What is it?
Yes, I mean, obviously we will look at City of Clearwater as a whole. So we will include, we'll get as much data as we can from the county and the state. We'd like to, they only look at their roads, so they're not looking, when they evaluate Drew Street, in other words, that DOT is doing now, they're not looking at much beyond that, at if you do a road diet, how that will affect our parallel corridors. So we really want to be more of the ownership of this data, to be more regionally relevant moving forward in mobility assessments. The beach obviously will be a big thing to look at, possibly looking at, I know we evaluated a while ago, some one-way pairs, things like that, just getting creative and innovative on how to address some of our traffic problems, with safety being one of the big priorities.
So we've never had this kind of study, or we don't have this data available right now?
We haven't done anything like this in quite a while, especially looking at all of the city. We looked at just little pieces, but this will give us a more holistic, realistic approach versus just little corridors here and there.
And when is it going to be completed if we approve it? What's the timeline?
By the end of the year, around November, and then we'll take a step back. We're going to try to include in this next budget process more money for some traffic improvements, things like that, and then we'll take a look at what we find here and prioritize appropriately. But ultimately, this will also give us a tool to evaluate things moving forward, too. So let's say we make some changes to Drew, we can put that in this traffic model and then understand how it affects everything moving forward. Evaluating Imagine Clearwater as the events ramp up is obviously part of this.
Okay, I mean, part of my, my items for future meetings is to really take action on Drew Street. And, when you said we're going to look at this in conjunction with Drew Street, I'm just thinking, of residents who are like delay. And so, waiting for results in November of 2022 and then looking at them and how do they fit in. It's just this kind of, I fear that it's kind of a put-off of taking concrete action on slowing down Drew, which is one that residents continuously, talk about.
Right. This is independent of anything that DOT is doing related to Drew Street. They just now are interviewing engineer of records to move forward with the next step of Drew Street. We have not seen their final report from their current effort. We've requested that. We expect it imminently. but it's really, it's not, one is not contingent on the other. So I do not see this effort delaying anything that FDOT is doing.
Okay, thanks.
We really need to do a better job of coordinating everything. We turned certain corridors over to the county back in the mid-2000s because we were trying to work together on ATMS and ITS on the roads, which is the cameras and the timing and the traffic center that is located for the county here in Clearwater. Mr. Jennings and I did meet with the county administrator, and this was one of the topics that we discussed, because there are intersections along Gulf to Bay, for instance, that we still control the lights. And so I don't think we always see the smoothest flow that we could get. And, you know, we do not have the ability really to expand. So we have to run more efficiently. That's really the only way we're going to get better traffic flow within the city of Clearwater. We can't widen, you know, roads and whatnot. So I think this is a more holistic view. I'm also happy to see that we're going to do some special event traffic details. I've never understood why we didn't have a little bit more of a plan on 4th of July. If you go to Gainesville or Tallahassee, that are towns that don't have major roads internally, but they deal with traffic very well after football games. And it's because there's a plan. So I think that's another benefit that's going to come out of this. Consent? Councilmember Albritton.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in response to that, that Drew Street's moving forward. Pinellas, Ford Pinellas is pushing that, as well as DOT, and this plan will, I think, be very good to see what the other, because we've always talked about what impact will Cleveland, will Drew Street have on Cleveland and other, you know, parallel streets. So, and then with Imagine Clearwater, she said, the traffic patterns coming out of that, I think this is really a good study. So I'm for putting it on consent.
Very good. 9.6.
Approve a road transfer and a local agreement between Pinellas County, Florida and the city of Clearwater.
Morning, Council. Tom Mahoney, Engineering Department. So over the years, annexations and road transfers have caused some confusion regarding the jurisdiction and responsibility for operation and maintenance of the roadways in Pinellas County. This would be including all 24 municipalities within Pinellas County. Therefore, the Pinellas County engaged the Center for Urban Transportation Research at the University of South Florida to aid in addressing these transportation, planning, and roadway policies and provide initiatives into the county. We've been working with the county over the last year to provide the transfer of certain road segments and related easement interests from the county to the city to establish the proper jurisdiction and provide for maintenance and operation and maintenance of those roads and easements. This agreement contains the specific road segments and associated easements that staff has determined appropriate for the formal transfer to the city. As stated above, due to circumstances such as annexations, the subject road segments have been, for all intents and practical purposes, have been maintained and controlled by the city. This agreement will formalize the jurisdictional control of the segments, which join segments already within the city's control and responsibility. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Mahoney? All right, consent. 9.7.
Ratify and confirm purchase order to engineer of record Hazen and Sawyer, Tampa, Florida for engineering support for the Marshall Street and Northeast water reclamation facilities.
Good morning, my name is Jeremy Brown, Engineering Manager. The purpose of this project is to repair digester gas that's leaking from the Marshall Street and the Northeast water reclamation facility digesters. The engineer of record is providing general guidance, procedures, and assisting the contractor with the repairs. At this point, a bypass system is in place and gas is no longer leaking. However, sludge still needs to be removed from the digesters before they can be cleaned, inspected, subsequently repaired prior to putting them back in service. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Beckman.
Will this help with some of the odor that's been pretty pungent around that area at all?
I'm sorry?
The odor?
Will this help with the odor? This particular project may not help with the, well, actually, right now it will a little bit because there is gas leaking. But in terms of the overall plant, this is sort of an isolated area.
Okay.
But as part of the, there's a water reclamation facility master plan that we have. That's going to be looking at all three plants, and odor control is certainly one of the things that they're looking at.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Consent?
Yep. Thank you.
9.8.
Approve the First Amendment to contract for purchase of real property by the City of Clearwater by and between the city and Covenant Property Investors, LLC.
Morning, Council. Tom Mahoney, Engineering Department. In June of 2021, the city declared the city's portion of the Pelican Parking Garage surplus for the purpose of sale. The city has a contract for the sale of this garage through invitation to bid. Litigation has been filed on this challenging the city's bid process. Staff is recommending extending the closing date 60 days after litigation is resolved, or February 1st, 2023. I'll answer any questions if you have.
Questions for Mr. Mahoney? Consent? All right, we're going to take a quick recess.
an extra pen by chance?
Good morning. We will reconvene the January 18th, 2020 work session. We are on item 10.1.
Provide direction on the proposed First Amendment to an existing development agreement between AP Beach Properties LLC and the City of Clearwater for property located at 401, 405, 415, 419 Coronado Drive, and confirm a second public hearing in City Council chambers before City Council on February 3, 2022.
Thank you. Mark Perry, Planning and Development. The primary component of this amendment proposes the inclusion of 3 additional adjacent parcels into the overall subject site. They constitute about 0.44 acres. It'll bring the total site area up from 1.32 acres to 1.759 acres. Essentially, the issue is this. All 3 of these parcels have had or are in the process of having all of their development potential transferred from them to other sites in the Beach by Design planning area. Beach by Design in the hotel reserve section specifically says that you can't have a parcel that has had its density or intensity of use removed included as part of a hotel development agreement. In this particular case, staff felt that it was kind of a gray area because the intent of that section in Beach by Design was essentially to stop someone from selling all or some of the development potential from a site and then turning right around to the city and saying, hey, give me some units out of the reserve. In this particular case, although these 3 parcels either don't or won't have any development potential on them, they're not being used in any way towards the intensity of use. The total number of units is staying exactly the same. It's 166 units. That was ultimately approved. It's staying the same. So the density is actually decreasing. Property area is increasing, the density is decreasing. The main purpose of this is that these parcels, the only use that they'll actually have left is really either parks and recreation facility or parking. So essentially they're going to be incorporated into the design of this building to make for a more efficient use of parking. That's the reason that they're doing this. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
So you're spreading the peanut butter over a bigger piece of bread?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay. Questions? Councilmember Beckman?
Sorry, that's okay. Parking versus some green space? I mean, what would we do if it wasn't allocated for parking? It would just be open land that the city would maintain?
No, it's not publicly owned property. Okay. It's privately held property, so it's...
but its value would be...
Would be a remainder that really makes the property less usable, right? I mean,
yeah, there's no development potential. Development potential in our code is essentially relegated to floor area for commercial uses, hotel density, or residential density. These 3 parcels won't have any of that, so their use is very limited. So what the use will effectively be is part of the parking on this site. And like I said, there's no intensity of use. They're not increasing their units on this site. They're not asking for any additional units or anything like that.
Other questions or comments? We'll talk about that further on Thursday. 10.2.
Approve the proposed Second Amendment to an existing development agreement between the City of Clearwater and Nesc LLC.
Thank you, Mark Perry, Planning and Development. This is a development agreement amendment for parcel. Essentially, it's to allow the use of 8 slips that are existing that have been built as part of an existing hotel. The original agreement precluded the use of any commercial uses whatsoever on this property at all. And what the hotel user wants to do is be able to use 8 slips for very limited commercial uses, geared only for guests of the hotel, things like taking their hotel guests out on like a charter cruise or fishing or what have you. The uses are very limited. They're specified in the proposed amendment, and that's the purpose of this amendment.
Questions? Councilmember Beckman.
It seems strange to me that it would be only for the use of hotel guests and that you wouldn't open it up to other tourists or visitors or residents.
Well, if they do that, that would turn that component of their dock into a marina facility. And that would generate its own parking requirements and things like that. And they, as it's been relayed to me, that is not their intention at all. It's to basically add another service, another amenity to their hotel guests.
With 8 slips, okay. Is that similar, do you know, the Marriott on Sand Key has jet ski rentals, and those are maybe only for their hotel visitors? It's not a commercial thing that they operate out of?
Yes, essentially, theoretically, almost all the hotels that have waterfront property that have jet skis, those jet skis are typically supposed to only be for guests of the hotel. Same thing with any of the hotels that are offering like these little fun scooter things, you know. They're supposed to be only for hotel guests. They're supposed to be an amenity.
You said supposed to be. Do you think that they're not always?
Well, probably some of the scooter rentals, like the, you know, the ones that those little cars, those mini cars, debatable, but the jet skis are really only supposed to be for hotel guests, and I know that code compliance goes out and checks on that.
Yeah. Well, my brother-in-law rented one of those scooter things with his son, and he wasn't staying at the hotel, so. Okay.
It's almost impossible to regulate, I
would
think is the bottom line,
Yeah.
right?
It's difficult. I mean, it's easier, I think, with something like this where you're taking cruises out. I mean, the larger it is, I think the easier it is probably to regulate.
So there's nothing built here yet, correct?
Oh, no, this hotel's built, the docks are in, it's on the north side of Papaya on East Shore. It's the northeast corner. Yeah, that hotel's there, it's been built.
This is the new,
Courtyard.
Courtyard.
This is the courtyard.
This is the courtyards. This is the courtyard's dockage area.
Yeah, the docks are built, the hotel's built, it's there. It's been developed.
Yeah, no, if that's what it is, I'm familiar with it, no problem. Okay.
And the docks are publicly accessible?
No, the docks are,
Only for the hotel guests?
Yeah.
Okay, because
But
I'm
there
just.
is the boardwalk back there.
yeah, the boardwalk is publicly accessible. That was part of the deal. The
All right.
boardwalk
Yeah,
is publicly accessible, the docks are not.
Right. So, I mean, if we have a publicly accessible boardwalk, there is no way that these amenities are only for hotel guests. I mean, it's just not.
Well, they would
You know,
have them.
like you said, it's impossible to regulate, you know, they're gonna, and I don't think a hotel, I don't know how big the hotel is, but it's not gonna have enough guests that are going to utilize 8 different types of boats or features or, you know, what are those things, the
Slips.
gliders and all that business that people take up in the air. You know, I mean, they've gotta open it up to the tourists. I mean, so, I mean, I don't have a big problem. I don't know if other amenity providers down in the beach area feel like this is not fair to them. I don't know what their side of the story is, but if there's a public boardwalk and there are docks out there that are owned by this hotel, and people think that only hotel guests are gonna be using those amenities, I'd say, I don't believe it. Just don't. And
Mr. Dell?
I just don't think it is.
Yeah, I think a number, probably 10, 12, 15 years ago, we actually opened up this provision and allowed some of the hotels, some of the private property developers out there to create some commercial slips to rent, basically because it was purely intentional that we wanted to increase the capacity of our waterfront. So these can be transient slips. Folks could go there and park their boat at this hotel, walk to the beach. And so a number of, we've had a property immediately to the north of this one, which is not redeveloped. They're on landward site, but they redeveloped their marina. They added some commercial slips in there that they can rent transiently or to boaters. And so what we're doing is basically with minimal on the private sector investment side, increasing the capacity of our waterfront. So it has been a pretty successfully implemented program. It's created few, if any, issues, and it's also provided additional boating capacity to our waterfront.
And I think that's all great, but if we have language in here that says it's only for hotel guests, I think that's wrong. I mean, and so can we just take it out? You know? I mean,
Well, I think,
Ms. Clay.
like Mark said, if you take the language out and allow it to just be commercial, then you bring in, okay, now you gotta have
Oh, the
parking
parking
requirements
business.
and this and the
Okay.
other. Like I said, enforcement is the key here. And
Okay.
if there is no enforcement, then, and you just kind of let the market handle it, you know, it is
Okay.
what it is.
Now I got it. I got it, yeah. Yeah.
Ms. Clay,
So
do you have something
stinking
to add?
parking requirements are a big pain, aren't they?
Good morning, Gina Clayton,
Multiple
Planning and
ways.
Development. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think the intent is that this is accessory to the hotel. People are not driving there theoretically to use them. If other hotel guests from other hotels want to walk there and make use of it, we don't have any concerns with that. As Michael said, it really fulfills a need on the beach, and I think that's really the intent here.
Got it.
I mean, some of it's gonna take care of itself, because if they're allowing people to park from the outside, they're not gonna have enough parking spaces for their guests, and it'll take care of itself. All right, well, we'll have to talk about that further on Thursday. 10.4,
10.3,
3,
approve amendment to the Clearwater Comprehensive Plan, creating a new property rights element, modifying the future land use and housing elements as support workforce, affordable, and missing middle housing, and updating the coastal storm area and hurricane storm surge maps.
Thank you, Kyle Brotherton, Planning and Development. So this case involves amendments to the comprehensive plan covering three main topics. The first is the addition of a new property rights element, which is now required by the statutes. The incorporation of amendments to the future land use and housing elements as an interim step until Clearwater 2045 is complete, and the updated maps to reflect new sea, land, and overland surges of hurricanes or slosh data. So the proposed property rights element is based off of language in the statutes from House Bill 59, and the city is using the same approach as other municipalities have taken when creating this new element. Generally speaking, the amendments to the future land use and housing elements relate to supporting and encouraging a mix of housing types such as affordable, workforce, and missing middle, as well as vertical mixed-use developments as appropriate for density and intensity bonuses. The ability for the city to utilize the reduced multimodal impact fees for single-family dwellings based on square footage, and further reduced fees for low-income household projects. And we're also clarifying policy intent with regards to accessory dwelling units. These amendments will need additional community development code amendments to be fully implemented. However, these amendments to the comprehensive plan do lay that groundwork for those code amendments in the future. And then lastly, the new slosh models were adopted on August 4, 2021, and they require the updating of the coastal storm area CSA maps, which are E1A and E1B, as well as your hurricane storm surge zone maps, which is E2. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
any questions? Councilmember Beckman.
So I have questions. I was searching for them frantically. I guess I put them on the next agenda item, which has the same document attached, right? The Planning and Development Department Community Development Board staff report, which is phenomenal. You know, it was really detailed and easy to understand. So I just had a question. First of all, I wondered why we lumped these three things into one ordinance, you know? But when we talk about affordable and workforce housing incentives, I wanted to know, I just want to make sure, and we noted that we're competitive with surrounding municipalities in the county, because that was part of the feedback that the AHAC gave. And then let me just make sure that I got it. Because 10.3, the one is property rights and legislative. Are they the same thing there? Legislative text, let me see. Sorry about this. Well, Okay, never mind. Never mind. It's for the next agenda item. I'm all good. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I don't have questions for 10.3.
3. Any other questions? All right, 10.4.
There we go.
Approve amendments to the Community Development Code addressing home-based businesses, building design review, and building permit fees, and supporting the city's affordable and workforce housing initiatives.
That's good.
There we go.
Good morning, Lauren Matsky, good morning, Lauren Matsky, Planning and Development. So this case involves amendments to the Community Development Code to address several key topic areas, several of which were necessitated by legislative changes passed in this session, in the 2021 session, and others related to affordable housing. I'm going to work in general in the order in which they come through in the ordinance. So first would be the affordable housing incentives. The proposed ordinance amends the current density bonus for affordable housing projects to establish a prorated increase for those units designated affordable between 15 and 25% of the overall project. It also provides additional off-street parking reductions for designated affordable housing units. It adds a requirement for long-term bike storage for projects that are approved with the parking reductions. And it establishes new fee reductions for building plan review and permit fees, which are proposed at 75% reduction in the fee table. The remaining items in the ordinance are all related to legislative changes. First is for home-based businesses. The proposed amendments would repeal the city's regulations regarding home occupations and replace with new standards consistent with the statutory regulations that became effective in July governing home-based businesses, and that was in regards to House Bill 403. Next, there were some legislative changes related to the preemption of design review for residential buildings, which was House Bill 401 and Senate Bill 284. For that, the Community Development Board is the city's design review board, and in that capacity, they review applications and determine compliance with established design criteria. So the proposed ordinance incorporates direct reference to these functions into the code to address that legislation. And then last, there were some legislative changes regarding discounts for private provider services. These were necessitated as well through House Bill 401 and Senate Bill 284, which included provisions requiring cities reduce permit fees for projects utilizing private providers for either building plan review or building inspection services. We already have certain discounts for the building plan review, but not for inspection services. So during this process, we evaluated all of that in whole. The proposed ordinance would increase the current fee reduction for those projects using a private provider for plan review from the 33% that it is now to 50%, and then also add a new 50% reduction for the permit fee charges. And additionally, these would also apply to projects using a private provider for inspection fees. So with that, I can answer questions.
Any questions for Ms. Matsky? Councilmember Beckman, you
Yes,
have
I'm guessing
questions on
there's
this
one.
one?
Finally got on the right document. This is a great document, Lauren. It's really, it's detailed and easy to read. And so we have a statement that the code defines an affordable housing unit as residential dwelling unit leased or owned with a household income of 120% or less of AMI for Pinellas County. And then, and I've got, and when we look at this, the current table establishes a bonus for those projects providing either 15% affordable housing units or 25% affordable housing units. The code does not state what bonus would apply to projects providing a percentage somewhere in between. So my question is, can we make it a minimum of 25% have to be affordable housing? And can we, because we have such a challenge to try to find very low income housing at maybe 60%, 80%, or anything under 100 and under, can we tighten that up and make it, you know, something that's more pressing than 120?
So I'll answer this in two ways. First, these were intended to be very targeted amendments because we were already proposing some code amendments to address the legislative changes. So knowing that we were going through the AHOC process and other things, we partnered with Economic Development and Housing to identify if there were any quick simple things that could be done until we finish the much larger project, which is our update to the comprehensive plan, Clearwater 2045, during which time I would expect a number of code changes to be recommended to really address the affordable housing needs that we have. That being said, the way the current code is structured, it is intended to incentivize mixed income projects, hence the bonus being larger for projects that have that range, or currently the 2, and then a smaller bonus for projects that have a higher percentage of affordable housing. We could certainly integrate in more changes at the pleasure of council. I would recommend doing some research to it.
Okay.
Or we can take these comments and work with our consultants to set up the policy guidance through the comprehensive plan and continue working on this going forward.
Okay. That seems to be a kind of a refrain, we're working on the strategic plan, we're working on the Parks and Rec strategic plan, we're working on the traffic study, we're working on the comp plan. It's like...
Yes, ma'am, and I understand that, which is why at a point we wanted to go ahead and bring a few things forward.
Yeah.
So we could, not hold everything until the big project is done.
When you wrote this, you've indicated that the code applies to single family and duplexes. So the triplexes, those quadplexes, those different types of housing, as soon as you're past a duplex, it's considered multifamily housing? Is that why that distinction is made there?
I believe you're potentially mentioning the fee structure, the fee changes that are specific to 1 and 2 family.
Yeah.
Yes, it changes things in the building code process, and so for the purposes of this, in coordination with the building official and again, economic development housing, for now it was proposed to apply to the 1 and 2 family.
Okay. Is that a normal distinguishing thing? Is once you go from a duplex, you're in a whole different ballgame?
Yes.
Because those triplexes and quad, developments or structures are really serving a good purpose. We have a number of them in the city that I think are working. So, just kind of a note on that. So I just made a note. This is why we need to invest in public transportation, is that we can give people these discounts if they're near those mass transit areas. So there's a section 3-90B includes additional reductions from 2 spaces per unit between 1 and 1.5 and 1.25 units for all other affordable housing projects within 1,500 feet of transit stops, which provide more frequent service levels. Okay, I get that. Mm-hmm. Does the city play any part in determining where our transit stops are, or pushing for more transit stops where we know that our residents who might not be able to afford multiple cars are? Do we have a say in that, or is it just with, our representatives on PSTA, or how does that work?
It's done through PSTA and through representation there and our partnerships with them. In researching for this, I would say there are a wide variety of routes. I think I indicated in the staff report. The vast majority of our routes meet this threshold, which was pleasantly surprising. I really wasn't sure when I was first going down this kind of research to see. So that was good.
So we do have good routes okay.
Councilmember Albritton, you want to weigh in on that real quick?
Yeah, we have good routes. The thing I'd like to see is the intervals. And that takes money, and it takes everybody to be on board with that, because we're going to be talking about that through PSTA probably in the next year, but coming up with money for that. So, but Ford Pinellas, that's one of their jobs with the Pinellas Planning Council, is to make sure that these new plan developments integrate with transit, and that's why they're combined, because it just makes sense, especially in our, the way we're fully built out, everything's redevelopment, and if we're going to be redeveloping bigger places with more people, we need to have transit involved with that.
Okay. Councilmember Beckman, did you have additional questions?
Yep. The standards, I couldn't find the section on standards for long-term bike parking. Does, it kind of, I'm assuming it means like covers, easy to lock, it's a lit area, things like that. Is that what we mean for
Yes.
bike?
They were added when we did the updates for the downtown code, when that was established, the downtown district rather. We integrated in some standards for long-term bike parking because we started to introduce the requirement for long-term bike storage in downtown specifically, and this would expand that.
So all of this is good information, and I'm hoping that this will be highlighted on our Affordable Housing Developers website that the AHAC and the Neighborhood Affordable Housing Advisory Board had been discussing. So we'll put these things out there, right, for public. And then when we talk about, you've got on the policy page, the City of Clearwater shall continue to provide information, incentives, and technical assistance to the private sector in order to achieve housing production that meets the needs of very low, and moderate households. When we talk about very low and low, we're talking about primarily elderly and disabled people. Do you think that's about right? I mean, when
I'm not sure at that point. I would defer to Denise if she knew, but
these,
it's those defined ranges.
And then I guess the last thing is just a little thing. You've, on the last paragraph, the last page, there's a sentence that says, similarly, the CDB acts as the LPA of the city and has the assigned duties. What's LPA?
Oh, nuts. I usually spell out
I know you
acronyms.
do,
I'm
yeah.
terribly sorry
No,
about
it's
that.
fine.
It's the local planning agency.
Okay.
It's a statutorily defined term that we have to have.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, we'll discuss that further on Thursday, 11.1.
Declare laboratory maintenance equipment surplus and authorize the sale of the equipment listed through bids or public auction.
Gardner.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Rich Gardner, Director of Public Utilities. The item before you today is for the surplus and sale of laboratory and maintenance equipment no longer used by public utilities. The laboratory equipment is no longer needed as we've contracted out the majority of our water analysis. Likewise, we are doing any machinist work by contract and won't need the maintenance equipment. I'm asking for your approval to surplus and ultimately sell this equipment, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Consent?
Yep.
12.1.
Appoint Robin Field to the Neighborhood and Affordable Housing Advisory Board as a citizen who is actively engaged in the banking mortgage industry in connection with affordable housing, with a term to expire January 31, 2026. Council members, Ms. Linda Kemp was serving in that capacity, and she was serving a third term. We were able to identify another individual who could serve in that capacity, and that is the only individual we have on file.
Any questions for Ms. Cole? Consent?
Yes.
12.2.
Reappoint Donna M. Dennis to the Library Board with a term to expire January 31, 2026. Council members, Ms. Dennis is the only one we have on file to serve in this capacity, and she is completing her first term.
Everyone fine?
Yep.
13.1.
Mayor, this is a request to settle the case of Phillips versus City of Clearwater for $95,000. Mr. Foligno is here to speak to that item and answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Foligno? All of you been had one-on-ones on this? Councilmember Beckman?
Yeah, just you can confirm that some of the procedures and stuff have been reviewed by the police department related to this one and what happened?
That's my understanding, yes.
Consent?
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell, anything else? None. Mr. Margolis, nothing? Any new business from council members? Vice Mayor?
Well, it's not anything for a future meeting, but I just want to, if you'll allow me a few minutes.
We have until 12:30, the CDB is coming in.
I'm not going to take that long,
Okay.
but just, we are into a uncharted, previously non-experienced climate in our city elections that are upcoming in March. I've been here all my life. I've known every elected official. I've known, almost everyone who has run. But up until this cycle, we've never had sitting council people, a sitting council person actively participating in a campaign for someone who is running for a seat. Or even publicly endorsing any candidate because of what it is. And Mark, you're right out front working with Aaron. Nothing says you can't do that. It's just never been done. And I'm not sure we're being well served, that the people of Clearwater are being well served in that capacity. But what really upset me was Tracy wrote an article about the trash art, and the article, take it for what it was, that's fine. But you put on your Twitter feed a link to that article, and you identified Aaron by his Twitter handle or whatever, but you said he will take out the trash. To me, I know you're taking that as a, kind of a, comedic approach. I took that as you referring to someone who's taking the initiative and being involved, being willing to run for this seat, for where I'm sitting right now, and you basically calling that person trash. I think that's unbecoming. It was totally uncalled for. And I personally, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I personally believe you owe Lena a public apology for that, because it was totally uncalled for.
Well, I don't believe I called her trash.
I think you referred to her as trash by saying Aaron will take out the trash. And the article was centered on Lena and the effort she put into the trash from art, or art from trash project that she.
But as far as support goes, I could be mistaken about this, but weren't you and some of the other people here part of her some sort of host committee for her campaign kickoff event?
I am in a position where whoever wins the seat, I don't have to work with them. I'm in a position as an outgoing person, I have no problem. I have never endorsed or gotten involved in an election while I was sitting here and was going to have to work with whoever wins the seat. And that's how it's always been with everyone else. But if we want to change the atmosphere, we want to change the environment of Clearwater elections, and I'm not sure it's changing it for the better, we can all sit here and do endorsements. Because you want me to do an endorsement. This man right here has done so much good. For him not to get reelected would be a travesty, an absolute travesty for David not to get reelected. That's my opinion. For the people that are running in my seat, I mean, I know all three people that are running. I know pros, I know cons about every one of them. If you want me to say it, I'll say it right here. I think from the body of work of each of the three candidates running for my seat, I think Lena by far is better qualified to sit here at this point in time. But I don't have to work with whoever wins. You do. You're actively working with Aaron. If Aaron doesn't win, Lena does. What is Lena's incentive to, you see something you want to get done. What is her incentive to say, yeah, I can help you with that? When she doesn't have, I wouldn't have the incentive to do it. But like I said, Clearwater elections have never created that atmosphere. And if that's a road we're headed down in the future, I don't like it, and I'm not happy about it. So, and I just wanted to get that off my chest and have it be said.
It's certainly not a road that I've addressed here, but it certainly seems like you have now. So you've upped the ante as to this. I expect if Alina gets elected, she'll act professionally, as will I. I'll be happy to work with her.
I'm just saying there's never been a city council person actively campaigning and working with a candidate. Now, they can privately tell people, yeah, this is who I think is a better candidate and that kind of thing, but not making campaign appearances with them and doing things of that nature. It's just not something that has ever happened in this city, and maybe happens in other cities. It does happen in other cities, but I think Clearwater, one of the qualities of Clearwater, what makes Clearwater the quality place it is that kind of stuff has not happened here. That's not been the environment that we've had to exist in, and I'm getting old, and whatnot, but I just I'm not thrilled with it.
Let me just ask, have I overstepped my bounds here?
No.
By these actions?
Let me answer that in a couple of ways.
We'll talk more about it privately.
Sure, just a couple of general thoughts on this. So, number one, just to make a general observation, I mean, council members, of course, in your private capacity, have the ability to either endorse, not endorse, get involved, not get involved, etc. So you have the same First Amendment rights as any other citizen, and in fact, in many ways should have greater First Amendment rights because you've been elected by the people. So to the extent that any of you wish to get involved in campaigns or don't wish to get involved in campaigns, you're welcome to do so. The second thing I wanted to say was that we do have a council rule talking about making endorsements from the dais, and so I would encourage each of you probably to be careful to make sure that we're not endorsing from the dais, because we do generally tend to keep that separation between when you're on the dais versus when you're out there. Those are really the only two comments that I would make at this time.
Thank you.
Like I said, I never said it. You didn't have the right to do it. I'm just saying that's not been the way in which it's happened for years and years and decades. But the part that got me more was Aaron will take out the trash with a link to that article, and that article was centered on Lena. And so you basically were referring to Lena as trash, and I thought that was unbecoming of someone who sits in one of these seats, period. So.
Well, I mean, I had some general issues about her use of these projects to put money in her own pocket and, more importantly, to promote herself, like with the video that she made promoting Clearwater. Well, she was essentially the co-star of it, with her name in the credits everywhere. So it was promoting her as much as it was promoting Clearwater, and city funds went toward that. So, but I'm not saying that this is,
DDB funds.
Okay.
Well, that's not the same, so.
Thank you.
Make your language correct.
I appreciate the correction there. So those, those are things that I have not brought up at a meeting previously, because there's been no need to. But I just wanted to respond to what you're saying here. But I understand, my intent was never to use this dais to promote any candidate. In this situation, Aaron actually helped me get elected, making appearances with me, doing videos with me. So I thought it was unfair for me to not show up and say hello to people at his meetings.
Other comments? Councilmember Beckman.
Well, I have a list of comments, but I'm going to follow up on that. I am just shocked that that conversation just took place. I understand Councilmember Hamilton bringing forth a comment about that article and tweet or whatever that I found inappropriate, but that's just my personal opinion. But to further the discussion and campaign for a candidate from the dais is, I feel, unethical, and as Mr. Margolis said, against our policy. When I talked to Pam about, and you all know I've championed more resident engagement and having more people run for office and making it easier for people to run for office, as we had our discussion about ranked choice voting, et cetera, in our election format. When I talked to Pam about candidates who run and my part in that, she advised not to actively campaign or endorse anyone because you don't know who you're going to be sitting up here next to. And I have made it a point not to do that. And I don't. And, as the article that came out yesterday, Tracy's article about me out knocking on doors to engage voters, check on voter registration, let them know about our election. Every once in a while I'll ask, well, who do you think I should vote for? Who would you vote for? And I say, we have a number of candidates. Go to our city website, check them out, do your research, and make sure their values align with your values. And that's exactly what I say again and again. And for you to say, Councilmember Hamilton, that you are, people don't publicly endorse candidates up here from the dais, and we've never done that way. I will say that people have endorsed publicly with a host committee, with videos right now, and that's their choice. But for me, I am not doing that. And so for you to say it's never been done is not correct because it's going on right now. And I just wanted to make that clear. As far as really important things that I have on my talking list for future meetings. So I'd like us to have a meeting about the Clearwater Development Board representation and recommendations from CNC for a seat at the table to represent residents. The CNC made a presentation months ago about having a resident on that board. Perhaps a first step could be a non-voting resident, but I'd like to have that as a point of discussion in a future meeting and a really upcoming next future meeting because, as you know, we have appointments to be made on that development board in February, and our residents have concerns as expressed by the CNC. I'd like to have a discussion about our policy about the limit of benefits we receive from the city. Benefits as city council members. When we get free tickets, comp tickets, things are sponsored, should we have a limit on how many free tickets we get to events? And should there be parameters on that? And I'd like a discussion about why those free tickets are at the, under the guise of the Clearwater Gas Company and not just the city of Clearwater, believing in that organization or that event. For example, Habitat for Humanity. When we had the Havana Nights, those tickets I think were $150 or $200. I fully support Habitat, but I wrote the check because it was funneled, went through the gas company, which I understand is a legitimate way to do it. But I question our, and this is part of the discussion, but I question our the amount of money we put for advertising and promotion for the gas company when we have green print goals to reduce carbon emissions. So it seems like they're conflicting a little bit. I think that would be an interesting discussion to have. I would like to make a request and figure out, in my meeting with Mr. Margolis this week, but residents are clamoring for lower speed limits on Drew Street. We've had, and when I made my notes on this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, whatever, I had in here that we had, in the last couple of weeks, 2 telephone poles were crashed into by vehicles on Drew Street and had to be replaced. And as I'm writing this up, I think it was Sunday night or Sunday evening, I got a text that another pole was hit on Sunday with a loss of electricity in the neighborhood. And so I'd like us to, wherever we own, whatever part of Drew Street we control, I'd like those speed limits lowered as much as we can. And I'd like us to send a letter to FDOT to ask them to lower those speed limits on their sections, like now.
Well, we only own Myrtle West, which is not where the problem is.
Okay, right, okay. All right.
So, just point of
Thank you.
clarification
Thank you.
on that.
So, again, could we send a letter to FDOT requesting and a vote on it, so people know which council members are in favor of that and which aren't? I have a couple things, but I had mentioned in I think our December meeting to see our lobbyist group step up to help us with resident engagement, especially as we have the legislative session going off to a roaring start. And so maybe an update on what are those possibilities and what can we make happen in the next 60 days or so. As our departments are working on proposals for this year's budget, I want to be fully informed of the procedure and timeline about, when those departments put forth their budget requests. And I'd like a presentation on that before the council in a work session so that residents know how that money is how departments figure out what they're going to ask for and how we make decisions on what comes before us for the budget approval in late summer. So how might I weigh in? How can residents weigh in? And I want to be aware of what's going on in the front end, especially related to ARPA funds. So 22.4 million, I know we've got 11.2. I don't know if we got the second tranche and it's sitting there, but we have a lot of money, and I'd like to know what's going on behind the scenes and how that is being navigated. And I know I mentioned this to John Jennings in my weekly meetings with him, a lot of this stuff. And I know he's struggling with, his health, he's not feeling well today, but, the wheels turn, and these things are very important. And so I just want to make sure that they're put on the calendar. And then the last thing, this super light and fun, maybe, don't we have Go Bucks banners that we could stick out on the old City Hall? Like, is it time to put those up right now, if we want to do that?
We still have them for City Hall.
Okay, so I don't know if we have to make a motion, but.
Any other items from anyone? I think every CDB member is a resident of Clearwater, just for clarification. That's one of the requirements. So it's not as though there aren't residents on the CDB, they're all residents.
That's noted, good point.
As far as the elections, I just hope I think for the first time, the last election really saw some campaigning that I had never seen in the past 20 years, unfortunately. And Clearwater had really been exempt from that. And I think it started last campaign. I think it's unfortunately probably going to continue this campaign. I have talked to people who construed the one tweet in a very negative way, Mark, just so, whether you believe that or not, that's not how it was construed by people out in the public. They thought it was a direct shot. That being said, I am going to endorse people this go around. That's how important I think this election is, and I am going to be endorsing people. I won't do it from up here, but people will probably see it out in the media, because I think it's an important campaign. And so I'm going to take a position not only at the ballot box, but also with my endorsement of specific candidates. So Anything else? If not, we will adjourn until Thursday. Thank you all.